Hard work doesn't guarantee success. One of the most brutal truths people realize with maturity is that hard work doesn't guarantee success. From a young age, we're told that if you show up, put in the effort, and never quit, the rewards will follow. And while effort matters, life doesn't always play by that rule. Every day, millions of people wake before dawn, put in long hours, and give everything they have, yet many still find themselves struggling with money, overlooked for promotions, or drained without fulfillment. Hard work is important, but it is not a promise. Timing, luck, health, resources, and connections can all alter the outcome in ways effort alone cannot. Market crashes can erase decades of dedication. Illness can interrupt even the most determined careers. Two people may work equally hard, but one benefits from opportunity and support, while the other fights uphill battles no amount of persistence can easily overcome. This isn't to say effort is meaningless. Hard work builds resilience, sharpens skills, and positions you for opportunity. But it's a mistake to see it as a contract with guaranteed reward. Success is the result of effort combined with circumstances, choices, and factors often beyond our control. Accepting this truth changes how we view achievement. It shifts focus away from resentment when results don't come and toward appreciating what hard work always gives: strength, discipline, and readiness. These are the qualities that ensure, when opportunity does appear, you can seize it fully. Hard work doesn't guarantee success, but it guarantees you'll be prepared for success if it comes. And in a world where certainty doesn't exist, preparation is often the closest thing we have to control. Nobody owes you anything. You might remember a time when you worked hard on something and expected recognition, only to receive silence. That sting, that quiet disappointment, is often the first encounter with one of life's harshest lessons. Nobody owes you anything. From childhood, the world is framed as though fairness is natural. Effort leads to reward. Kindness returns kindness. But reality works differently. People are busy carrying their own burdens, chasing their own needs, and protecting their own priorities. Your struggles matter deeply to you, but to most others, they are background noise. This doesn't make people cruel. It makes them human. We are wired towards self-preservation. Most of the time, help and recognition come only when it aligns with someone else's capacity or interest. Waiting for others to notice, to step in, or to repay what you believe is owed leads only to bitterness. Psychologists often warn about the trap of entitlement. When someone believes the world should reward their effort automatically, they set themselves up for disappointment. In contrast, those who assume nothing is guaranteed often end up stronger. They see generosity as a gift, not a debt repaid. They celebrate recognition when it arrives, but they don't depend on it to move forward. This shift can feel cold at first, but in practice, it's freeing. If nobody owes you anything, you stop waiting. You stop resenting. You start acting for yourself, knowing that any support that comes along is a bonus, not a promise. The fact to remember is this: the world may not hand you fairness, praise, or love, but it does give you the chance to build, to try, and to create meaning on your own terms. And that, in the end, is enough. Not everyone you love will love you back. Most people remember their first unreturned crush, hours spent daydreaming, small signs mistaken for interest, and then the quiet sting of realizing the feelings were one-sided. That early experience is often the first glimpse of a lifelong truth. Not everyone you love will love you back. Human connection is complex. Attraction, timing, personal history, and circumstance all shape who we bond with. You might see someone as the center of your world, but to them, you may be a friend, a passing presence, or nothing at all. This imbalance doesn't mean your love is worthless. It means that love, unlike math, doesn't always balance out. Psychologists describe relationships as a mix of compatibility and reciprocity. Compatibility may exist. You may share values, humor, or goals, but without reciprocity, the bond cannot take root. Countless songs, poems, and stories throughout history circle this pain, because it's universal. To love and not be loved back is part of the human condition. What matters is how we respond to it. Some people cling tightly, hoping effort will change the outcome, but affection forced or bargained for rarely lasts. Others retreat into bitterness, treating love as a failed investment. But another path exists, to accept the truth without resentment. Loving someone who does not return your feelings can still teach patience, empathy, and resilience. It can remind you that love's value lies in the act of giving, not in the guarantee of receiving. The heart's hope for mutual love will never fade. And when it does happen, it feels rare and precious, precisely because it isn't automatic. Not everyone you love will love you back. And that is what makes the moments of love return so meaningful. Your parents won't be here forever. For many of us, it happens in small, almost unnoticed moments. You call home and realize your father's voice sounds weaker than it used to. You watch your mother pause on the stairs, catching her breath. These shifts remind us of a truth we try not to face. Your parents won't be here forever. It's easy to assume the people who raised us are permanent fixtures in our lives. From childhood, they are the background of our world, steady, reliable, seemingly unchanging. But time moves quietly, and age leaves its mark. What once felt endless is, in reality, limited. Sociologists studying family bonds note that relationships with parents carry a unique weight. They are often the longest relationships we will ever have. Yet precisely because of that length, we take them for granted. We delay phone calls, postpone visits, and assume there will always be another chance. The truth is more fragile. Illness, accidents, or the slow passage of years eventually remind us that no amount of wishing can pause time. Accepting this reality does not mean living in constant fear of loss. Instead, it means shifting how we value the time we still have. A conversation, a shared meal, even a few minutes of laughter can become treasures when we recognize they are finite. When the day comes that our parents are no longer with us, regret often stems not from what they failed to give, but from what we failed to share while we could. Your parents won't be here forever. Acknowledging that truth can be painful, but it also offers clarity. It invites us to stop postponing love, to stop waiting for the right time, and to show our gratitude while we still can. Most people only want you when you're useful. You notice it in small patterns. The phone rings when someone needs a ride, but stays silent when you're struggling. Messages arrive when a favor is required, but vanish when you simply want company. Over time, the pattern becomes hard to ignore. Most people only want you when you're useful. This truth is uncomfortable because we like to imagine relationships as unconditional. In reality, many connections operate on an unspoken exchange. People gravitate toward what helps them: advice, resources, opportunities, even emotional support. When the usefulness fades, so too can the attention. Sociologists call this a transactional layer of social life. It doesn't mean every bond is shallow, but it does explain why friendships can drift when circumstances change. Think of co-workers who stop calling once you leave the job, or acquaintances who vanish when you can no longer offer introductions or help. These relationships were never built to endure without utility. This can feel like betrayal, but it is often less personal than it seems. People are pulled by their own needs and survival. Recognizing that prevents bitterness. Instead of expecting everyone to be constant, we can learn to distinguish between those who value us for who we are and those who value us for what we provide. There is freedom in that awareness. It teaches us to invest energy in the few who show up without conditions, while setting boundaries with those who only appear when it benefits them. Most people only want you when you're useful. That truth might narrow the circle around you, but it also makes the circle stronger. The ones who remain, when you have nothing to give but yourself, are the ones worth keeping. Time is the only resource you can't replace. Everyday routines have a way of blurring together. You wake up, check your phone, head to work, maybe scroll for an hour at night before bed. Then weeks pass, months pass, and suddenly, an entire year is gone. That's when it hits. Time is the only resource you can't replace. Money can be lost and earned again. Friendships can break and new ones can form. Even health in some cases can be repaired. But time, once it slips away, is gone permanently. No amount of effort, wealth, or regret can buy back yesterday. Psychologists studying how people look back on their lives find that regrets almost always tie to time. Time not spent with loved ones, time wasted on the wrong pursuits, or time postponed on dreams that never came. What's striking is that people rarely regret the hours they invested in meaning. They regret the hours they gave to distraction, fear, or delay. This truth doesn't demand urgency in every second. No one can live life as a non-stop sprint. Instead, it asks for awareness. How we spend time shapes not just our days, but the story of our lives. Even small choices, calling a friend instead of scrolling, taking a walk instead of another meeting, can add up to a life that feels fuller, rather than emptier. Time is the only resource you can't replace. It is what makes ordinary days precious, because there are only so many of them. The reminder isn't meant to scare, but to sharpen perspective. Every hour is an investment, and the returns are the life you get to look back on. People will betray you. It often begins quietly. A secret you trusted someone with finds its way into the wrong ears. A promise that felt solid is suddenly broken, or the friend you thought would stand by you chooses convenience instead. These are the moments that reveal a truth few like to say out loud. People will betray you. Betrayal is one of the oldest human experiences. It's written into myths, tragedies, and even religious stories, because it cuts deep into the fabric of trust. Trust is fragile, built slowly, often over years, but it can be shattered in a single decision. What makes betrayal sting isn't just the act itself, but the closeness of the person who commits it. Strangers cannot truly betray us. Only those we've let inside our guard can. Psychologists explain that betrayal often comes not from malice, but from competing interests. A colleague may share your idea to protect their own position. A partner may leave because they feel unfulfilled. In their world, the choice might feel necessary, even if in yours it feels devastating. This truth doesn't mean everyone is untrustworthy. Many relationships are loyal and resilient, but it does mean no bond is immune to strain. Recognizing this can help us set boundaries, guard what matters most, and avoid being blindsided by misplaced certainty. When betrayal does happen, the pain can linger. Yet it also clarifies. It shows us who values us and who doesn't. It reminds us to place trust carefully, not casually. People will betray you. Accepting that fact doesn't harden the heart, it steadies it. Because once you know betrayal is part of the human landscape, you can stop pretending otherwise and start building resilience for when it arrives. You'll be forgotten in a few generations. Think about your great-grandparents. You may know their names, perhaps a story or two, but beyond that, the details are hazy. Go back one more generation and most people can't recall anything at all. This isn't unique to you. It's the natural course of human memory, and it points to a sobering truth. You'll be forgotten in a few generations. We live our lives as if permanence is guaranteed. We document moments, collect achievements, and hope to leave a mark. But memory fades quickly. Families grow, new generations arrive, and priorities shift. Even in close-knit families, photographs eventually lose their stories, leaving faces no one can name. Historians describe this as the half-life of memory. Unless someone's life is recorded in books or tied to major events, their presence fades within 3 or 4 generations. It's not a sign of failure, it's simply the way time works. Humanity looks forward more than backward. This truth can sound bleak, but it doesn't have to be. If we accept that being remembered forever is unlikely, the focus changes. Life becomes less about trying to carve your name into stone and more about living fully while you're here. The kindness you show, the love you give, the impact you make in the present. Those are what shape your life, even if they're not remembered centuries later. You'll be forgotten in a few generations, but that does not erase the value of your existence. Your life matters in the lives it touches today. Memory fades, but meaning is lived in the moment. And perhaps that is enough. The world doesn't pause for your pain. A city street moves as it always does. Cars honking, people hurrying, shops opening their doors. Somewhere nearby, someone has just lost a loved one, or ended a relationship, or heard news that will change their life. For them, time feels broken, but the world outside carries on. That is the harsh truth. The world doesn't pause for your pain. When grief or heartbreak strikes, it feels enormous, large enough to stop everything. Yet the routines of others continue untouched. Deadlines arrive, trains depart, conversations carry on. The contrast can feel cruel, as if life itself is indifferent to suffering. But that indifference is not without meaning. The continuity of life, harsh at first, is also what allows healing. The sun rises whether you are ready or not. Days move forward, pulling you with them even when you feel frozen inside. Pain may seem to suspend your world, but outside it, the rhythm remains steady, and eventually, it helps guide you back. This truth asks for balance, to accept that pain won't halt the world, but also to allow yourself the time you need to walk back into its pace. No one else will adjust it for you. The step forward, however small, must be yours. The world does not stop. It never has. But in its unbroken movement lies a strange kind of promise. Life keeps going, and in time, so will you. Death can come at any moment. You leave the house in the morning, planning your day, maybe thinking about what to eat for dinner. It feels ordinary, routine, almost guaranteed. Yet life holds no guarantees. A sudden accident, an unexpected illness, or a random twist of fate can end everything without warning. Death can come at any moment. We often live as though time stretches endlessly ahead. Calendars fill with future plans, dreams are pushed off to someday, and daily routines repeat as if tomorrow is certain. But the reality is less predictable. The line between living and not living is thin, and it can be crossed in seconds. Researchers studying human behavior note that people naturally avoid thinking about death too often. It's called mortality salience. We push the idea away because constant awareness would make daily life overwhelming. Yet ignoring it completely can also lead us to waste time on trivialities, as though we have an unlimited supply of days. This truth isn't meant to paralyze, but to sharpen perspective. Knowing life is fragile encourages presence. A conversation with a loved one carries more weight when you understand it could be the last. A walk outside feels richer when you realize no moment is guaranteed to repeat. Death's unpredictability makes ordinary life precious. Accepting that death can come at any moment doesn't mean living in fear. It means recognizing that time is borrowed and that every day is both fragile and valuable. It pushes us to say what matters now, to do what feels meaningful today instead of postponing endlessly. Life has no pause button and no promise of tomorrow. That is the brutal truth. But it is also the reminder that the only time we ever truly own is the moment we are in right now. Life isn't fair and never will be. The line between privilege and struggle is drawn before life even begins. One person grows up surrounded by opportunity, another faces obstacles at every turn. Neither chose their starting point, yet it shapes nearly everything ahead. From the beginning, life reveals a truth that is difficult to accept. It isn't fair, and it never will be. History is filled with examples. Soldiers were sent to wars they never started. Families lost entire harvests to storms they could not predict. Communities were devastated by disasters through no fault of their own. Hard work and virtue have never guaranteed protection or reward. The same imbalance plays out quietly in everyday life. A promotion goes to someone less qualified. Illness strikes the cautious while others seem untouched. Two people give the same effort, but only one is noticed. Each moment is a reminder that fairness is not built into the fabric of the world. Cultures have carried this awareness for centuries. Ancient proverbs warn that fortune is fickle, and stories describe the righteous who suffer while the undeserving thrive. The lesson has been told in different words, but always with the same conclusion. Fairness is an ideal, not a reality. Accepting this doesn't mean surrender. It means seeing clearly. You cannot level the ground for everyone, but you can choose how to walk on it. Life doesn't hand out justice evenly. It never has. The challenge is not to wait for fairness, but to keep moving despite its absence. Love is not enough to sustain a relationship. A couple sits at a dinner table. The food is untouched, and the silence between them is heavier than words. Affection still lingers, but the ease is gone. Arguments repeat, frustrations circle back, and the bond feels fragile. Love is there, but love alone isn't holding it together. Love sparks connection, but it doesn't sustain it. A lasting relationship needs trust, respect, shared direction, and effort. Without those, love burns bright, but burns out quickly, like a flame with no fuel. Many people fall deeply in love, only to discover later that daily life tests a relationship in ways feelings alone cannot withstand. History and culture have told this story countless times. Tragedies in literature, ballads sung across generations, and modern tales of heartbreak all echo the same theme. Strong feelings are not the same as strong foundations. Relationships often collapse not because the love disappears, but because the structure to hold it up was never built. In everyday life, the examples are everywhere. Two people may care deeply for one another but struggle to communicate. Another couple may love sincerely, but drift apart because their values pull in opposite directions. Love, on its own, cannot resolve those divides. This doesn't diminish love, It is powerful, necessary, and beautiful, but it is only the beginning. What keeps people together is what's built around it: patience, trust, compromise, and the willingness to grow side by side. Love starts the story, but it cannot finish it by itself. Without support, even the strongest feelings fade under the weight of reality. Success attracts envy, not just admiration. A small business owner opens their shop early, day after day. After years of long hours, things finally take off. Customers line up, sales grow, and the business becomes known in the community. The congratulations come first. People admire the hard work, the courage, the achievement. But soon, the tone shifts. Whispers begin. They got lucky. They don't deserve it. It must be nice. The success hasn't only brought admiration, it has also awakened envy. This is the other side of achievement that few talk about. When you rise, you remind others of their own struggles, their missed chances, or their unfulfilled ambitions. Instead of being inspired, some feel unsettled. The applause is mixed with comparison, and comparison often breeds resentment. It shows up in ways that don't always look obvious. A friend grows distant after your promotion. A relative starts adding a sharper edge to their compliments. Online, praise can turn into criticism, not because of a mistake, but because you stood out. Success shifts how people see you, some with respect, others with quiet hostility. Admiration and envy are inseparable. They walk in together. The moment you stand on higher ground, both voices arrive. One cheering, one resenting. And learning to live with that contrast is part of the weight that every kind of success carries. Regret weighs more than failure. An old man sits by his window, watching the street below. He doesn't talk about the jobs he lost or the deals that fell apart. What lingers in his voice are the chances he never took, the trip he postponed until it was too late, the words he wanted to say but never did, the risks he avoided out of fear. Failures faded with time. Regret stayed. Failure stings in the moment. A plan collapses, a dream doesn't work out, an effort ends short of the goal. But failure brings clarity. It teaches lessons, builds resilience, and in many cases, opens the door to trying again. Failure is heavy, but it moves. Regret is different. It sits quietly and grows heavier with age. You can see this difference in ordinary life. Someone takes a chance, falls short, and feels the disappointment, but they carry the pride of trying too. Another person waits for the perfect timing that never comes. Years later, the memory of not starting weighs far more than failure ever could. The harsh reality is that you can recover from failing. You can rebuild, learn, and try again. But regret has no remedy. Once the chance is gone, nothing replaces it. Failure may bruise you. Regret will hollow you. And between the two, it's the one you didn't attempt that lingers the longest. Your job will replace you within weeks if you leave. On a Friday, someone clears out their desk, leaving behind only an empty chair and a nameplate. By Monday, the emails are rerouted, the workload redistributed, and the office rhythm resumes. The transition is swift because it has to be. Workplaces are built to continue without pause. That's the unspoken truth. Your job will replace you within weeks if you leave. This isn't new. When kings died, successors were crowned before the throne had cooled. When inventors passed away, their rivals or students stepped into the gap. In every era, roles are filled quickly, not out of malice, but necessity. The world doesn't wait for one person. Even loyalty in the modern workplace has limits. A decade of service can be followed by a farewell card and a swift job listing to fill the role. Titles, promotions, and recognition are temporary. Once you're gone, someone else will sign the reports, take the meetings, and sit in your chair. This truth may feel harsh, but it is clarifying. A job can give structure, challenge, and purpose, but it cannot give permanence. The lesson is simple. While you are working, do the work well, but never confuse your position with your identity. Your job will move on quickly. You, however, only get one life. Fear kills more dreams than failure. A musician stands backstage, guitar in hand, heart racing. The crowd is waiting, but the thought of stepping out feels unbearable. They turn away, convincing themselves they'll try another time. That moment never comes. The dream wasn't ended by failure, it was ended by fear. Failure is painful, but it's also a teacher. It shows what didn't work, where to improve, and how to begin again. People who fail often discover resilience they didn't know they had. But fear stops everything before it starts. It silences ambition at the doorway, leaving behind only what-ifs. Across history, countless ideas never saw the light of day, not because they were impossible, but because their creators never risked rejection or embarrassment. For every story of someone who stumbled and stood back up, there are far more untold stories of those who never began. The same pattern plays out quietly in daily life. People remain in jobs that drain them because fear of change feels heavier than the discomfort of staying. Others hold back words of love, worried they won't be returned. Years later, it is not the failures that haunt them, but the chances they never took. Failure leaves scars, but it also leaves lessons. Fear leaves nothing but emptiness. And between the two, it is fear that kills dreams before they ever have the chance to live. People remember mistakes longer than victories. A worker delivers excellent results for months. Reports arrive on time, projects finish smoothly, and colleagues admire their consistency. Then one day, a mistake slips through. A missed deadline, a wrong figure, a small oversight. The victories quickly fade from conversation. The mistake, however, becomes the story repeated in meetings. It's a reminder of a harsh reality. People remember mistakes longer than victories. Wins often feel collective. A team shares in success, a family celebrates together, a community takes pride in the moment. But mistakes are different. They isolate. They highlight one person, one action, one error. That contrast makes them sharper, easier to recall, and harder to forget. The same pattern appears in everyday life. A friend can be reliable for years, yet cancel once at the wrong moment, and that memory lingers. An athlete can break records, but many will recall the one loss rather than the countless wins. Success blends quietly into the background, while mistakes stand out in bold. This imbalance can feel unfair, but it carries a lesson. Since mistakes are noticed more, how you respond to them matters deeply. Owning the error, repairing the damage, and moving forward can shape the story just as much as the mistake itself. Victories may fade, but mistakes leave marks, and the measure of someone is not whether they are flawless, but how they carry the weight of their flaws. The world doesn't reward fairness, it rewards leverage. Two companies release similar products. One is carefully built, affordable, and praised by early customers. The other has deeper pockets, stronger connections, and the resources to flood the market. Which one wins? More often than not, it isn't the better product. It's the one with leverage. The world doesn't reward fairness. It rewards leverage. Fairness suggests that effort and quality should naturally rise to the top. But outcomes are rarely shaped by effort alone. They are shaped by position, resources, timing, and influence. Throughout history, brilliant inventors have been forgotten while lesser ideas thrived, simply because someone else had more capital, reach, or political backing. Workers have been overlooked despite talent, not for lack of ability, but for lack of connections. Nations have risen to power not through fairness, but through advantage. The same pattern unfolds quietly in daily life. A student may put in hours of study, but the one with a mentor gains doors that effort alone cannot open. An employee may deliver excellent results for years, but someone who understands timing, relationships, or office dynamics may advance faster. Merit matters, but leverage often tips the scale. This truth is not meant to dismiss effort. Hard work builds the very skills and credibility that can become forms of leverage. But effort without position often stalls. Knowing how to use what you have, your knowledge, your relationships, your resources, turns work into influence. The world is not an even playing field. Waiting for fairness is like waiting for the wind to stop blowing. The real challenge is learning to catch the wind as it moves, using it to carry you further. That is the difference leverage makes. Being alone is better than being with the wrong people. A person sits at a crowded table, surrounded by conversation and laughter. On the surface, they aren't alone, yet the noise feels hollow. The company doesn't comfort them, it drains them. It's a sharp reminder of a truth that's often learned slowly. Being alone is better than being with the wrong people. The wrong people don't always appear hostile. Sometimes they smile, joke, and share space, but behind it comes dismissal, criticism, or a lack of respect. Staying close to them may ease the fear of being alone, but the cost builds quietly. You end up managing tension, defending yourself, or shrinking to fit. The room is full, but the connection is empty. This reality shows up in everyday life. A friend who consistently mocks rather than supports. A partner who discourages growth because they fear being left behind. A workplace clique that bonds over exclusion. These connections may look like belonging, but they wear you down. Choosing solitude is not easy. It carries silence, stillness, and moments of discomfort. But in that space lies freedom. Being alone means energy is no longer spent pretending. It can be spent reflecting, resting, and preparing for connections that nurture rather than drain. Over time, solitude often opens doors. With space cleared, there is room for people who bring trust, encouragement, and respect. Relationships formed in that way are fewer, but they are stronger. Loneliness with the wrong crowd is heavier than solitude on your own. Walking away may feel difficult, but it creates the chance to rebuild your circle with people who truly matter. Complaining changes nothing. A man spills coffee on his shirt before an important meeting. He curses, shakes his head, and spends the next hour telling everyone how unlucky his morning has been. The shirt is still stained. The meeting still goes on. The only thing that grew was his frustration. Complaining didn't change the outcome. This is the nature of complaint. It feels good in the moment, like pressure being released from a valve. But once the words are spoken, the situation remains the same. The traffic jam doesn't clear. The weather doesn't improve. The missed opportunity isn't restored. Daily life offers endless chances to complain about delays, about people, about circumstances that can't be undone. And yet, every minute spent voicing dissatisfaction is a minute not spent moving forward. Complaints hold attention on what went wrong instead of pointing toward what might make things right. It doesn't mean that frustration should always be swallowed. Sharing a difficulty can bring comfort, and speaking up against injustice has its place. But the casual, constant complaints that fill so much of conversation rarely solve anything. They drain energy instead of fueling it. The difference is easy to see. One person mutters about bad weather all day, carrying irritation like a weight. Another shrugs, adapts, and finds something else to focus on. Both face the same storm. Only one carried it beyond the clouds. Complaining may feel like motion, but it leaves you standing in the same spot. Turning that energy into acceptance or action is what actually shifts the path forward. Discipline beats motivation. Everyone has felt it before, the burst of energy that comes with a new idea or goal. You feel inspired, maybe even unstoppable for a few days. But then the mood fades, the spark dies out, and the goal starts slipping away. This is where a tough truth shows itself. Discipline beats motivation. Motivation is emotional fuel. It feels powerful, but it's unpredictable. Some mornings you'll wake up full of it, and other days it will be completely absent. If your progress depends on motivation alone, your results will rise and fall with your mood. Discipline works differently. It's the system you build when the feeling isn't there. It's the alarm set every morning, the routine followed regardless of inspiration, the choice to act because it's scheduled, not because it feels exciting. Athletes, writers, musicians, anyone who achieves mastery, rely on discipline far more than fleeting motivation. Psychologists studying habit formation note that repetition gradually shifts effort into automatic behavior. Over time, discipline creates structure strong enough to carry you even through low-energy days. The very act of showing up, again and again, compounds into results. This doesn't mean motivation is useless. It can spark beginnings and make the journey feel lighter when it's present. But when motivation disappears, discipline keeps the wheels turning. It is the difference between starting something and actually finishing it. Discipline beats motivation, not because it feels better, but because it doesn't depend on feelings at all. It builds consistency, and consistency builds outcomes. In the end, the life you shape isn't determined by the days you felt inspired. It's determined by the days you showed up anyway. Comfort zones destroy ambition. Picture this. The days roll by with little variation. The job is steady, the pay is fine, the routine predictable. At first, that stability feels like a blessing. The pressure lifts, the unknown is kept at bay. But as weeks turn into years, something else begins to happen. The larger dreams you once carried grow quieter. This is how comfort zones destroy ambition. Safety appeals to us for good reason. Predictability soothes the nerves. Familiarity feels like control. But comfort also blunts urgency. When nothing demands more from you, it's easy to stop demanding more from yourself. Ambition doesn't vanish in a single moment. It fades slowly, replaced by convenience, until the drive that once felt natural becomes a memory. You see this everywhere. A worker settles into a role they never meant to stay in. An artist stops pushing their craft once their work sells reliably. A student does enough to pass, but no longer challenges themselves to excel. Comfort feels easier than risk, so they remain where they are, telling themselves they'll try later. Later often never comes. Progress, by contrast, almost always comes through discomfort. The entrepreneur who faces uncertainty. The athlete who trains past exhaustion. The person who dares to begin something new without knowing the outcome. Strain and risk push people forward because growth requires adaptation. Comfort has value when it's a pause, not when it becomes a permanent home. Left unchecked, it can become a cage with soft walls, one you barely notice closing in. Ambition doesn't usually die in a dramatic moment. It withers quietly in rooms that feel too safe. And the only way to keep it alive is to keep stepping where comfort ends. Words mean little without action. A co-worker spends every week talking about how they want to leave their job, start a business, or change their habits. The words are confident, repeated often, even convincing at times. But weeks pass, then months, and nothing changes. It becomes clear over time. Words mean little without action. Language can carry weight. It can inspire, motivate, or reassure. A promise can lift someone's spirits. A declaration can spark hope. But without follow-through, words lose their force. They start to feel hollow, not because they lack emotion, but because they never take shape in reality. This is why trust is built on consistency, not speeches. In personal relationships, people remember who showed up, not who promised to. At work, it's the projects finished, not the plans discussed, that earn respect. Even in our private lives, we know this truth. Writing down goals or telling others about them feels good in the moment, but unless steps are taken, nothing changes. The danger of empty words is that they can create the illusion of progress. Talking about change feels almost like moving toward it, but it isn't. The longer action is delayed, the more fragile trust becomes. Both the trust others place in us and the trust we place in ourselves. This doesn't make words useless. They set direction, declare intent, and can open doors. But they only carry real weight when matched with behavior. Actions turn signals into substance. In the end, people believe what you do, not what you say, and the gap between those two is where character is revealed. Bad habits are easier to form than good ones. It often begins unnoticed. You stay up late once, scrolling through your phone, and suddenly midnight browsing feels normal. You skip the gym after a long day, and before long, skipping becomes the default. These small decisions reveal a reality that touches everyone. Bad habits are easier to form than good ones. The reason is simple. Bad habits usually offer immediate comfort. Sugar delivers a quick rush. Screens provide instant distraction. Putting something off feels like instant relief. Good habits, by contrast, often ask for patience. Exercise doesn't transform you in a week. Saving money doesn't show results after one deposit. Learning a skill takes months of repetition. One path rewards right away. The other asks you to wait. That difference explains why people slide so easily into habits they later regret. The brain clings to the fast reward, even if the long-term cost is heavy. Meanwhile, the behaviors that could change life for the better often feel slow, unrewarding, or even uncomfortable at the start. This imbalance is why breaking bad habits feels harder than forming them. It isn't just about willpower, it's about rewriting routines, finding smaller, healthier rewards, and staying with the new pattern long enough for it to stick. It feels like swimming against the current, because, in many ways, it is. But there's another side to this truth. Once good habits finally take hold, they carry a momentum of their own. They build strength, stability, and direction. They demand more at the beginning, but they give more in the long run. Bad habits form quickly, good ones slowly. But over time, the ones you choose to keep determine not just your routines, but the shape of your entire life. You can't please everyone. It shows up in small ways. At work, you stay late to help one colleague, only to hear another complain that you weren't available for them. At home, you try to juggle the needs of friends or family, but someone still feels forgotten. No matter how much effort you put in, someone is left unsatisfied. This is the simple but difficult truth. You can't please everyone. Human expectations often pull in different directions. What delights one person frustrates another. A decision that earns praise from one side may bring criticism from another. Even the most thoughtful effort can be misunderstood. The harder you try to keep everyone happy, the more you realize the task has no finish line. You can see this in every sphere. Leaders face criticism no matter their choices. Artists release work that some call brilliant and others dismiss. In everyday life, even genuine kindness can be twisted or overlooked. It isn't a failure of effort. It's the reality that perspectives will always clash. The danger comes when you let those shifting opinions dictate your choices. Constantly bending to meet every expectation leaves you stretched thin and unsure of who you are. The pursuit of universal approval drains energy but never delivers peace. Accepting this truth isn't an excuse to ignore others. It's a reminder to anchor your actions in values that matter to you and to focus on the relationships that truly deserve your effort. Pleasing everyone is impossible. Living honestly, even if it disappoints some, is the only way to find steadiness in a world full of conflicting demands. Forgiveness doesn't mean trust. A friend breaks a promise, apologizes, and you forgive them. The anger eases, the tension fades, but the next time they make the same promise, hesitation creeps in. Forgiveness came easily. Trust did not. That gap reveals a difficult truth. Forgiveness doesn't mean trust. Forgiveness is about release. It's a choice to stop carrying the weight of resentment, to put down the burden of bitterness. It allows a person to move forward without being consumed by the past. Trust, however, belongs to a different realm. It is not a decision made in a moment, but a pattern established over time. You can see this in everyday relationships. A partner might forgive harsh words spoken in anger, but that doesn't mean they immediately feel safe again. A colleague may forgive a mistake, yet still hesitate to rely on the person who caused it. Trust doesn't return with an apology. It rebuilds slowly, brick by brick, through actions that prove reliability. Confusing forgiveness with trust can be dangerous. It can lead people back into situations where harm repeats, where promises are broken again, and where words outweigh behavior. Forgiveness clears the heart, but trust guards it. Both are essential, but they are not the same. This distinction matters because it protects balance. We can let go of the bitterness without pretending that nothing changed. We can forgive someone and still expect them to earn their way back into our confidence. Forgiveness is a gift we give ourselves. Trust is a foundation others must prove they can rebuild. Mixing the two blurs boundaries. Keeping them separate brings clarity, strength, and safety. Growth feels uncomfortable. Think about the first time you tried something new, driving a car, speaking in front of a room, or walking into a job you weren't ready for. Your hands shook, your heart raced, and every part of you wanted to run back to the familiar. That tension reveals a truth we often resist. Growth feels uncomfortable. The pull toward comfort is natural. Familiar routines calm the nerves. Predictable patterns feel safe. But nothing new happens inside the familiar. Growth asks us to step where the ground feels unsteady. It demands mistakes, awkwardness, and the risk of not getting it right the first time. You can see it in athletes who walk off the field sore after pushing harder than the day before. You see it in students frowning over problems that stretch their patience. You see it in anyone who accepts a responsibility they're not entirely sure they can handle. Discomfort is woven into each of these moments, not as punishment, but as evidence that change is taking place. The mistake is assuming that discomfort means something has gone wrong. In reality, it often means you're exactly where you should be. Muscles ache because they're getting stronger. Confusion arises because the mind is reaching for new understanding. Unease appears because you're leaving behind an old version of yourself. This doesn't mean seeking pain for its own sake. Rest and stability have their place. But when discomfort appears as you stretch towards something larger, it is not a warning to retreat. It's a marker of progress. Growth rarely feels smooth. It usually feels uneasy, sometimes even painful, but that very discomfort is the clearest sign you are moving forward. Popularity is temporary. Think back to high school. There was always someone who seemed to define the moment, the star athlete, the class president, the one whose name everyone knew. For a time, their presence carried weight far beyond the classroom. Yet years later, most of those names fade into memory, replaced by others who came after. The cycle reveals a truth that doesn't end with adolescence. Popularity is temporary. Popularity lives on attention, and attention is fragile. What feels like the center of the world today quickly shifts tomorrow. A story dominates the headlines until another takes its place. A face fills every feed online, only to vanish when the crowd moves on. The spotlight doesn't linger. It searches constantly for the next subject. This pattern isn't confined to celebrities or public figures. It appears in everyday life. Someone becomes the focus at work, admired for a project or promotion, but months later the attention has shifted to someone else. A person gains sudden recognition in their community, but soon the talk moves on. Popularity has little to do with permanence. It rises fast, but it rarely stays. The challenge comes when people mistake popularity for value. Applause can feel like validation, but it's unstable, depending on moods and trends beyond your control. When it fades, and it always does, those who chased only attention often feel lost. What lasts isn't the wave of recognition itself, but what you build beneath it. Real friendships, meaningful work, and steady character remain long after attention drifts away. Popularity is a season, not a foundation. Accepting that truth frees you from chasing every spotlight and allows you to invest in what continues long after the crowd has turned. Trust takes years to earn and seconds to lose. Imagine lending your car to a friend who promises to take care of it. They return it with a dent and no explanation. In that instant, something shifts. All the years of reliability, laughter, and shared experiences suddenly feel overshadowed by a single choice. It's a reminder of how fragile trust really is. It takes years to earn and seconds to lose. Trust is the foundation of every meaningful relationship, from friendships and families to workplaces and communities. It grows slowly, built on repeated acts of reliability, kept promises, consistent behavior, honesty when it matters most. Because it takes so long to develop, trust feels strong, almost unshakable. Yet one betrayal, one lie, or one careless action can undo it instantly. Researchers describe this imbalance as the negativity bias. People remember negative experiences more strongly than positive ones. That's why a single breach of trust can weigh heavier than years of good behavior. The mind clings to the risk because once trust is broken, safety feels threatened. This truth can feel harsh, but it carries important lessons. It reminds us to protect the trust others place in us, to treat it as fragile rather than guaranteed. It also reminds us to be realistic with our own expectations, that trust, once broken, cannot be restored with words alone. It requires patience, consistency, and proof, often over a long period of time. Trust takes years to earn and seconds to lose. That reality may feel unforgiving, but it is also what gives trust its value. Because when trust is preserved, through consistency and care, it becomes one of the rarest and most meaningful bonds a person can hold. Nobody is coming to save you. A car breaks down on the side of a quiet road. The driver waits, convinced that help will arrive soon. Minutes pass, then hours, and no one appears. Finally, they step out, open the hood, and start figuring it out themselves. That small moment reflects a much larger truth. Nobody is coming to save you. As children, we grow used to help arriving. A teacher steps in when we're lost. A parent fixes what breaks. Someone older carries the burden. But adulthood strips much of that away. Bills pile up, work demands increase, problems stack higher, and waiting for rescue only leaves you standing still. You see this truth everywhere. Careers stall because people expect recognition to carry them forward. Health declines when hope replaces action. Relationships fracture when effort is postponed. Support from others may come in small doses, but the heavy lifting is always yours. The hard part is accepting the silence that follows when you wait too long. The phone call that never comes, the opportunity that isn't offered, the hand that doesn't reach down. It feels cruel, even unfair. But that silence also carries a strange clarity. It tells you the next step belongs to you. This doesn't mean life is without support. Friends, mentors, and communities can encourage, advise, or share part of the weight. But no one can carry it all. No one else can live your life for you. The moment you stop waiting, things shift. Responsibility feels heavy, but it also brings control. You begin to act not because rescue is on the way, but because you understand it never was. You are replaceable in almost every context. A stadium erupts in applause as a star player scores the winning goal. For weeks, their face fills the headlines, their name trends online. But months later, an injury forces them out. The team still takes the field. The season moves forward, and another player steps into the spotlight. The lesson is easy to miss when the applause is loud. Almost anyone can be replaced. This pattern isn't confined to sports. Offices, industries, and even communities work the same way. A colleague leaves, and after a brief pause, someone else takes over their duties. A neighbor moves away, and soon a new family lives in the same house. Even in close-knit groups, absence is absorbed more quickly than we imagine. It feels harsh because we want our roles to matter more. We tell ourselves that our presence is essential, that things would fall apart without us. But most systems, whether teams, companies, or families, are built to adapt. What changes is the person filling the space, not the space itself. That doesn't mean your life has no weight. What can't be replaced is the texture of your presence, the way you made someone laugh, the values you stood by, the kindness you chose to show. Those don't slot neatly into routines. They live on in memories and in the ways you've shaped others. Titles and tasks are temporary. What lingers is the person behind them. Ignorance is expensive. Bills left unopened on a table don't vanish. They pile up, quietly gathering late fees. A medical symptom ignored doesn't stay the same. It grows, complicates, demands more to fix later. The pattern is universal. What we turn away from today will return tomorrow with a higher cost. Ignorance doesn't save, it charges interest. In everyday life, this often hides beneath small decisions. Skipping maintenance because it's fine for now. Avoiding a difficult conversation because it'll sort itself out. Pretending a problem isn't there doesn't stop it from moving forward. It only means it advances without your awareness, gaining weight while you stand still. On larger scales, The price of ignoring reality is written in history. Warnings about rising waters overlooked until floods swept entire towns. Businesses dismissing change until competitors replaced them. Generations repeating mistakes because lessons went unheeded. In each case, the cost of not knowing, or refusing to know, far exceeded the effort of facing the truth early. The appeal of ignorance is simple. It feels easier. It shields you from discomfort in the moment. But ease is temporary, and the debt it creates always comes due. The longer the delay, the harsher the repayment. Knowledge, in contrast, carries its own weight. It requires facing discomfort, accepting risk, and taking responsibility sooner. But in the long run, awareness is far cheaper than avoidance. Ignorance is expensive because reality doesn't wait for your attention. It keeps moving, compounding, demanding payment whether you're ready or not. The choice isn't between effort and no effort. It's between effort now or a heavier price later. Arrogance destroys more than ignorance. In 1912, the Titanic was called unsinkable. That confidence became its downfall. Safety measures were dismissed, lifeboats were limited, and warnings of icebergs went unheeded. The ship didn't sink because no one knew the risks. It sank because arrogance ignored them. History shows it clearly. Arrogance destroys more than ignorance. Ignorance is a lack of knowledge. It can be corrected by learning, by experience, by time. But arrogance is different. It's the refusal to learn. It blinds people to warning signs and convinces them they're already above mistakes. While ignorance stumbles, arrogance walks straight into disaster. This truth plays out in daily life too. An athlete refuses coaching, convinced they know best, and their career stalls. A business leader ignores feedback from their team, only to watch their company decline. A student dismisses the effort needed to prepare, confident they'll succeed without trying, and ends up failing. The knowledge to improve often exists within reach, but arrogance shuts the door to it. Cultures across the world have warned about this for centuries. Ancient Greek tragedies showed heroes undone not by ignorance, but by hubris, an overconfidence that led to their collapse. Proverbs remind us that pride comes before the fall, not lack of knowledge. Arrogance is destructive because it disguises itself as strength. It feels like confidence, but it leaves no room for growth or adjustment. In contrast, acknowledging what you don't know creates space to learn, adapt, and move forward. The hard truth is simple. Ignorance can be corrected, but arrogance resists correction until it's too late. More lives, opportunities, and legacies have been lost to arrogance than to not knowing at all. Laziness costs more than effort. Left unanswered, the task pushed to tomorrow, the repair postponed until later. In the moment, it feels like relief. The burden is delayed, and with it, the illusion of freedom. But avoidance is not free. It gathers interest, and sooner or later, the debt comes due. This is the hidden cost of laziness. What could have been solved with steady effort becomes heavier with time. A delayed conversation becomes a fractured relationship. An ignored responsibility turns into a crisis. Even the body reflects it. Missed workouts or neglected sleep quietly erode strength until health itself demands attention. Effort has a price, but it is paid up front. Laziness spreads its cost out, multiplying it in ways we rarely see coming. That's why it feels easier at first, but harder in the end. The momentary comfort conceals a future weight. Every society has seen the same truth. Roads that weren't maintained eventually broke empires. Problems ignored at their smallest often grew large enough to topple entire systems. What wasn't repaired in time demanded far more later. On a personal scale, it's no different. Laziness is never just rest. True rest restores, but laziness delays. It leaves the mind restless, weighed down by the very things avoided. Effort requires energy, but it clears the path ahead. Laziness promises ease, but it quietly fills the path with obstacles. The difference is not only about what gets done, it's about whether life becomes lighter with progress or heavier with delay. Envy poisons your own progress. Envy rarely announces itself loudly. It seeps in quietly, a glance at someone else's success, a comparison that lingers too long, a thought that says, "Why not me?" At first it feels harmless, almost invisible, but left unchecked, it slowly reshapes how a person sees themselves and their place in the world. The danger of envy is not that it notices what others have. It's that it diverts attention away from what you could be building. Energy that might have gone into creating, improving, or learning, instead gets consumed by measuring, resenting, or wishing. Progress needs focus, and envy scatters it. Across centuries, this has been one of humanity's quietest downfalls. Kings undermined their own rule not through weakness, but through jealousy of rivals. Innovators wasted years trying to outdo others instead of refining their own ideas. The result was not achievement, but stagnation. Envy did not fuel their progress, it drained it. In daily life, the pattern is smaller but just as real. It might be the colleague whose recognition keeps you from noticing your own growth, or the neighbour's success that overshadows the opportunities right in front of you. The envy doesn't hold them back. It holds you back. Envy poisons progress because it works like corrosion, silent, steady, and always inward. It doesn't weaken the person being envied. It weakens the one who carries it. Progress comes not from measuring against others, but from putting energy into your own path. Without that shift, envy will do what it always does: leave you standing still while time moves forward. You can do everything right and still fail. A student studies late into the night, completing every assignment, following every rule. On exam day, they sit prepared, only to freeze under the pressure. The answers don't come, and the result doesn't match the effort. Moments like this reveal a truth most people face at some point. You can do everything right and still fail. Life does not follow a simple equation of effort equals outcome. Hard work and preparation matter, but they are never full guarantees. Circumstances, timing, luck, and factors outside of your control often shape the final result. Athletes train for years, only to suffer an injury before competition. Businesses launch with careful planning, only to be undone by market shifts they couldn't predict. Doing everything right reduces the chances of failure, but it does not erase them. Psychologists call this the illusion of fairness, the belief that life naturally rewards correctness. We cling to it because it feels safe. Yet when reality proves otherwise, it can be jarring. The key is not to deny the unfairness, but to adjust expectations. Failure, even when undeserved, is part of the landscape. History is full of examples. Writers whose manuscripts were rejected dozens of times. Scientists whose discoveries were dismissed in their lifetimes. They did the work, they followed the steps, and still they stumbled. But what separates those stories is not the absence of failure, but the persistence that followed it. What actually matters is recognizing that failure is not always proof of wrongdoing. It is often proof of circumstance. You can do everything right and still fail. But failure itself is not the end. It is only one part of the process. And what you choose to do afterwards shapes everything that follows. Some relationships expire no matter what you do. Two old friends meet after years apart. The conversation feels polite, but not familiar. The jokes that once came easily now fall flat. Both people care, yet the connection they shared has faded. No argument caused it, no betrayal broke it. The truth is simpler. Some relationships expire, no matter what you do. Life constantly changes us. People move to new cities, take on new responsibilities, or grow into values that no longer match. A friendship or romance that once fit perfectly can start to feel like wearing clothes that no longer suit you. For a while, you may try to hold on, forcing conversation, revisiting old memories, making plans that never quite happen. But sometimes the bond has already run its course. This isn't always a failure. Many endings aren't dramatic. They're quiet. A text unanswered. A holiday not celebrated together. A bond that once felt essential, quietly thinning until it disappears. The value of those relationships isn't erased when they end. They leave impressions that shape who you are, even if they don't last forever. Some people walk beside you for a mile, others for a lifetime. You don't always get to choose the distance. Dreams without deadlines are fantasies. Dreams carry energy. They spark excitement and offer a glimpse of a better life. But without a point to aim at, they drift. A deadline is more than a date on a calendar. It gives shape to a vague hope, creating urgency and accountability. It transforms someday into a path that begins today. This difference has shaped lives throughout history. Writers who committed to daily pages finished novels. Inventors who set goals delivered breakthroughs. Meanwhile, others with equally bright ideas held onto them too loosely. Their visions were strong, but without deadlines, they dissolved before taking form. In ordinary life, the same truth applies. Someone may talk endlessly about starting a business, traveling the world, or changing careers. The desire is genuine, but years pass and nothing happens. Without a timeline, even the most heartfelt ambition quietly fades. Deadlines don't guarantee success, but they guarantee action. They create pressure, yes, but also clarity. They turn a dream into something measurable, and being measurable makes it possible. A dream without a deadline lives only in imagination. A dream with one has the chance to cross into reality. The difference between fantasy and progress is not the dream itself, but the moment you decide when it begins. People judge you on results, not effort. History books rarely mention the hours of struggle behind an invention. They remember the light bulb glowing, the plane taking flight, the medicine that worked. Behind every visible success, there were countless late nights, wrong turns, and abandoned drafts. The work mattered deeply to the person doing it. But the world only remembers the result. This is the quiet imbalance between effort and recognition. To us, the sweat and sacrifice feel monumental. To others, they remain unseen. A painter's unfinished canvases, a musician's practice sessions, a student's endless notes, these are invisible once the outcome is revealed. If the painting never connects, the music never reaches, or the grade never comes through, the effort disappears in silence. Sports illustrate this most clearly. No one writes headlines about how disciplined a losing team was in practice. They write about the winner's score. The effort of both sides may have been equal, but the record books preserve only one. That reality may sound harsh, yet it carries direction. If outcomes shape perception, then effort must be paired with clarity. It isn't enough to simply push harder. The push must be aimed well. Results come not just from energy, but from refinement, adaptation, and strategy. People will always see the finish line, not the training, the scoreboard, not the practice field. That doesn't make the effort meaningless. It makes it the foundation that only has value when it creates something visible. In the end, hard work must meet impact. The hours matter to you, but the result is what speaks to the world. Self-pity solves nothing. Rain falls on everyone. Some open an umbrella and keep walking. Others stop, cursing the sky, wishing it were different. The rain doesn't stop either way. But the choice of response makes all the difference. This is what self-pity does. It keeps you standing still in a storm that was always going to pass if you kept moving. Pain itself isn't the problem. Grief, rejection, and failure all deserve to be felt. They carry lessons and remind us that we're human. But when those feelings turn inward and linger too long, they harden into self-pity. That's when sadness shifts from something to process into something that holds you down. Life has no pause button. While someone dwells on how unfair things are, the world keeps moving forward. The task remains undone. The opportunity slips by. The relationship cools. Self-pity doesn't just waste time. It multiplies the cost of what was already lost. Across history and in daily life, resilience is what sets people apart. Not those who never suffered setbacks, but those who refused to stay inside them. Sometimes the first step was small, trying again after rejection, showing up after embarrassment, or simply beginning a new day with fresh resolve. Progress rarely requires a dramatic leap. It usually begins by refusing to stand still. Self-pity feels safe because it asks nothing of you, but that safety is an illusion. It drains energy without ever moving you closer to repair. Action, however small, breaks the cycle. Self-pity solves nothing. Movement does. And every step taken forward, no matter how shaky, weighs less than staying stuck in place. Most opportunities never come twice. Think about how quickly life changes. A train leaves the station and the platform empties. A house goes on the market, and within days it's gone. A chance meeting sparks a conversation, and if you don't follow up, the thread disappears. These moments remind us of something easy to forget. Most opportunities don't wait around. They come once, and when they pass, they rarely return. Opportunity is different from routine. You can put off laundry or delay errands, and they'll still be there. But the job opening, the chance to collaborate, the person you could have spoken to on that day in that place, those conditions almost never line up the same way again. Timing is part of the opportunity itself, not just the decision. History shows this in bold strokes. An invention missed its moment because someone hesitated to back it. Leaders delayed choices that might have changed the course of nations. And in personal lives, countless people carry memories of moments they could have taken but didn't. Words unsaid, risks avoided, doors left unopened. This truth isn't about chasing everything frantically. It's about awareness. To notice when a door opens and to step through before it shuts. Not every chance will be the right one, but failing to move at all guarantees loss. Most opportunities never come twice. The challenge is to recognize them while they're here, to act with enough courage to avoid the weight of what if years later. Because regret doesn't come from the chances we take, but from the ones we let slip away. Sacrifices are mandatory, not optional. Life doesn't let us take without giving something back. Every path forward comes with a price, whether we acknowledge it or not. Sleep traded for ambition. Comfort traded for growth. security traded for risk. The exchange may change, but the rule doesn't. Sacrifice is built into every choice we make. What makes sacrifice difficult is that it rarely announces itself. It hides in the things we didn't choose. The invitations declined, the dreams set aside, the comforts postponed. Standing still doesn't avoid the trade-off either. It only guarantees that time slips away, and with it, possibilities that won't return. History is written by sacrifice, the painter who gave up stability to pursue their art, the explorer who left behind safety for discovery, the parent who surrendered freedom to raise a child. Each achievement was born from something willingly given up. What looks like gain from the outside always carries unseen costs within. The mistake many make is resisting this truth, hoping to keep everything at once. But trying to hold on to all options often leaves you with none. Life has limits, and limits demand choices. The real question is not whether to sacrifice, but which sacrifice to make. Sacrifice doesn't have to be dramatic. Sometimes it's as small as turning off distractions to focus, or saving instead of spending. Yet over time, those choices define both what we build and who we become. Sacrifices are not punishments, they are exchanges. And learning to make them with intention turns sacrifice from something we fear into something that shapes us toward what we value most. Entitlement kills growth. Entitlement rarely announces itself. It whispers quietly, "You deserve more," without effort. It shows up in small assumptions. That recognition should come automatically, that support should be constant, that progress should arrive without the grind. At first, it feels comforting. But beneath that comfort, growth begins to stall. Growth demands friction. It comes from mistakes, repetition, and the uneasy work of persistence. Entitlement strips those away by convincing you they're unnecessary. The focus shifts from improving to resenting. Instead of asking, "How can I get better?" the question becomes, "Why hasn't the world noticed me already?" History offers reminders of this trap. Talented athletes who relied on natural ability often fell behind those who trained harder. Writers who believed their skill guaranteed an audience faded, while others kept refining. Even entire societies that assumed prosperity was permanent eventually declined because they stopped adapting. The moment entitlement replaces effort, decay begins. In daily life, the cost is quieter, but just as real. The student who assumes intelligence is enough struggles when challenges deepen. The professional who relies on tenure instead of skill finds themselves overtaken. Entitlement doesn't always end in sudden collapse. More often, it leaves people stuck in place while others pass them by. Entitlement kills growth not with a blow, but with a slow suffocation. It convinces you that waiting is the same as moving forward until years pass and progress never comes. Growth begins where entitlement ends. When effort replaces assumption, the path opens again. Fear of failure wastes years of potential. Fear doesn't always shout. More often it whispers, "Wait a little longer. Prepare a little more. The timing isn't right yet." And so the days pass quietly. One postponed decision becomes a month, then a year, then an entire chapter of life gone. Not because the dream was impossible, but because fear kept it locked away. Failure, by contrast, is sharp but short. A stumble, a rejection, a misstep, painful in the moment, but often the very thing that teaches resilience. Those who try and fail at least move forward. Those who never try remain standing still. That is the heavier cost. History has no shortage of missed chances. inventions unbuilt, books unwritten, ideas that faded not from lack of brilliance, but from hesitation. Fear guarded the door so tightly that possibility never entered. The world rarely remembers those losses, but the people who lived them often do. You can see it on a smaller scale too. The person who never applied for the job because they feared rejection. The one who never spoke their feelings because they feared being turned away. Years later, the memory of silence hurts far more than any failure would have. The truth is that fear doesn't protect potential, it suffocates it. Failure costs pride. Fear costs time. And time, once spent, cannot be reclaimed. What wastes potential is not the attempt that fails, but the attempt never made. Your reputation is fragile. Reputation is like glass, strong enough to hold weight, transparent enough to reveal character, but always vulnerable to cracks. It doesn't shatter often, but when it does, the damage is visible, and even if repaired, the marks remain. Most reputations are not built on grand gestures. They're shaped in the quiet, ordinary patterns, showing up when you say you will, following through on commitments, handling setbacks without blame. Over time, those small consistencies form the image people carry of you. The danger lies in how quickly that image can change. One broken promise, one careless action, can ripple outward faster than years of steady reliability. Trust that took a decade to earn can be shaken in a moment, especially in a world where word travels faster than ever. This fragility is not new. Ancient leaders rose and fell on reputation as much as on power. Merchants were trusted or ruined based on whether their word held value. Communities remembered who acted with integrity and who didn't. The same principle carries into modern life. From friendships to careers, reputation remains a kind of silent currency. Perfection isn't possible. Mistakes happen. What matters is how they're handled, humility, accountability, and the willingness to repair what you can. Still, even with effort, rebuilding is often slow and incomplete. Reputation is fragile, but that fragility gives it value. It reminds us to protect it, to treat trust not as something owed, but as something earned daily. Because while reputation can be lost in seconds, when cared for, it becomes one of the most enduring strengths a person can carry. The past can't be changed, only accepted. Time is one of the strictest teachers. It moves in a single direction, never circling back, never allowing rewrites. What's said is said, what's done is done. The hardest part is not understanding this. It's learning to live with it. Everyone carries moments they wish they could undo. An argument that ended badly, a risk avoided out of fear, a decision that sent life down an unwanted path. These moments stay sharp in memory because the mind resists finality. It keeps searching for a way to bend the past, as if more thought could rewrite what has already hardened into fact. But the past is not clay. It doesn't reshape itself under pressure. It is stone. The only thing that shifts is how we carry it. Some drag it as a burden, replaying what can't be undone. Others place it in perspective, seeing it as part of the foundation they stand on now. History shows this at every level. Families carry regrets for generations. Nations carry scars from decisions that can't be reversed. Yet in both cases, the only way forward has always been through acceptance. Not pretending the past didn't happen, but refusing to be held hostage by it. Acceptance is not weakness. It doesn't mean forgetting or excusing. It means choosing to direct energy toward what is still open to change. The past is closed, but the present is not. The past cannot be changed. It can only be accepted, and in that acceptance lies the possibility of turning yesterday's weight into tomorrow's strength. Life doesn't give warnings before it changes. A clear sky can turn to storm in minutes. One moment the sun is warm, the next the clouds break open. Life works the same way. It moves steadily until, without notice, it doesn't. Stories everywhere reveal this pattern. A family meal interrupted by unexpected news. A community shifted by disaster overnight. A stranger met by chance who becomes central to your life. The common thread is that change doesn't ask permission before it arrives. It doesn't wait until we feel ready. This unpredictability unsettles us because we build our days around routine. We imagine tomorrow will resemble today, and often it does. But woven beneath that surface is the truth that everything can be altered in an instant. The shape of our lives is less permanent than we like to believe. Yet this very uncertainty is what makes life vivid. The surprise of opportunity, the gift of chance encounters, the sudden redirection of a plan that seemed fixed. Not all shifts are painful. Some open doors we would never have chosen, but later realize we needed. Knowing that life offers no warnings doesn't mean living in dread. It means treating the ordinary as precious, because ordinary is never guaranteed. It means tending to what matters now, instead of waiting until the future feels more secure. Life doesn't give warnings before it changes. That truth can be heavy, but it can also be freeing. Because while we can't predict what will arrive, we can choose to live in such a way that, when the moment comes, we have already given meaning to the days leading up to it. Success comes with sacrifices you may not like. The camera shows the finish line, the trophy, the stage, the handshake. What it doesn't show are the years behind it, the missed dinners, the late nights, the quiet trade-offs nobody applauds. Success carries a cost, and often it's paid in moments you can't get back. Every path has its hidden sacrifices. The student who tops the class may carry memories of weekends spent alone with textbooks. The business owner celebrated for growth often spent years choosing risk over security. Athletes rise to the podium, but long before that moment, they've pushed through injury, exhaustion, and loneliness. For every spotlight, there's a shadow of what was given up to reach it. Life doesn't let us excel in one direction without asking something in return. To gain mastery in a craft, you lose time elsewhere. To climb a ladder, you leave parts of the ground behind. Some sacrifices feel worth it. The discipline that builds skill, the focus that creates progress. Others sting more deeply. Missed connections, strained relationships, the erosion of balance. This isn't to say success isn't valuable, but it isn't simple. The polished surface rarely shows the toll beneath. Knowing this changes how we approach ambition. It allows us to ask not only, what do I want to achieve? But also, what am I willing to give up along the way? Success comes with sacrifices you may not like. The challenge is to choose which cost you can live with and which you cannot. Because in the end, success is never just what you gain. It is equally defined by what you've left behind to hold it. Gratitude is rare, entitlement is common. A farmer tends his fields from dawn until dusk. His children eat at a full table, rarely noticing the hands that made it possible. Years later, when they leave home, they look back and realize how much was given without recognition. That gap between effort and thanks isn't unusual. It is the pattern. Gratitude is rare. Entitlement is common. Gratitude asks us to stop and see the invisible labor that supports us. The teacher staying late to prepare lessons. The parent who quietly sacrifices comfort for stability. the friend who listens even when they're tired. Yet most of the time, these acts are absorbed into the background. They feel expected, as if they were owed. History is full of examples. Generations often inherit freedoms, wealth, or security built by those before them, but treat it as the natural order. Monarchs, leaders, and even everyday families have watched their sacrifices fade from memory, while those who benefit assume it was always meant to be. In daily life, entitlement often sounds like silence, the absence of thanks where it should be. A meal placed on the table with no acknowledgement. A kindness brushed aside as if routine. Entitlement rarely arrives with arrogance. More often, it arrives quietly, in the form of taking things for granted. And yet, when gratitude appears, it carries weight. A simple acknowledgement can turn obligation into pride, distance into connection. Gratitude costs nothing, but it transforms everything it touches. Gratitude may be rare in the world, but that scarcity is what gives it power. Choosing to practice it breaks the cycle of assumption and reminds us that nothing, time, effort, kindness, is truly guaranteed. Comfort is addictive. You sit on the couch after a long day, telling yourself it's just a short break. Minutes blur into hours, and before you realize it, the evening has slipped away. The ease feels harmless at first, but slowly it replaces the things you meant to do. That's the quiet danger. Comfort is addictive. Comfort doesn't only come in the form of luxury. More often, it's repetition that feels safe. Eating the same meals, following the same routines, or putting off challenges until tomorrow. These habits settle in without resistance because they don't hurt in the moment. But what they take is harder to see: momentum, growth, and opportunities that require discomfort to reach. What makes comfort addictive is its immediacy. Relief arrives now. The rewards of effort, risk, or learning arrive later. When the mind weighs those two, it leans toward what feels easier, and the choice repeats until it becomes routine. Over time, the pattern shapes a life that looks steady on the outside, but quietly drifts from what once mattered. This doesn't mean rejecting rest or ease. Comfort has a role. It restores energy. It creates balance. The danger lies in letting it set the ceiling. Too much comfort dulls curiosity, erodes ambition, and makes change feel harder than it is. Comfort is addictive because it asks for nothing while quietly taking away possibility. Seeing that clearly allows us to choose differently, to step into discomfort deliberately, so that comfort serves recovery, not stagnation. People lie often. You ask someone if they're fine, and they smile and say, "I'm good," even when they're not. A coworker claims they're almost finished with a project, though they haven't started. A friend insists they'll be on time but shows up half an hour late. These small moments reveal a reality we often overlook. People lie often. Lies are not always grand deceptions. Most are small, everyday distortions, meant to avoid conflict, protect an image, or make life a little easier. Psychologists call these prosocial lies, and research shows people tell them far more frequently than they realize. On average, humans bend the truth several times a day. But lying isn't limited to politeness. People also lie to gain advantage, to escape consequences, or to protect themselves. In workplaces, inflated reports are common. In relationships, promises are sometimes made with no intention of being kept. Even within families, truths are softened or hidden altogether. The uncomfortable part is not just that others lie, it's that we all do. Most lies are not malicious. They are born from fear, insecurity, or the pressure to appear better than we are. Still, Even small lies erode trust over time. A pattern of dishonesty, no matter how subtle, weakens relationships and reputations. Recognizing that people lie often doesn't mean becoming paranoid. It means being realistic. It means paying more attention to actions than words and holding ourselves accountable to honesty in places where it matters most. People lie often. That's the brutal truth. And yet, in a world where dishonesty is common, choosing honesty stands out more than ever. It becomes not just a virtue, but a quiet strength, one that builds the kind of trust that lies, no matter how frequent, can never truly match. Blaming others keeps you stuck. A project misses its deadline. Fingers point, excuses pile up, and the energy that could have gone into fixing the issue is spent assigning fault. It feels easier in the moment, less painful to shift responsibility onto someone else than to face it yourself. But this habit carries a cost. Blaming others keeps you stuck. Blame is comforting because it removes the burden. If the problem is always out there, you don't have to look inward. Yet that comfort is deceptive. When attention stays on what someone else did wrong, your own ability to change or adapt is ignored. And without ownership, there is no progress. You can see this in daily life. Workplaces where colleagues constantly point fingers rarely improve. Relationships built on trading accusations lose trust instead of finding solutions. Even personally, blaming circumstances for every setback ensures the same obstacles appear again and again. This doesn't mean pretending others never make mistakes. They do. But there's a difference between holding someone accountable and getting trapped in blame. Accountability moves toward resolution. Blame circles endlessly around the problem, replaying the past instead of reshaping the future. Blame keeps you where you are. Responsibility moves you forward. And while it may feel heavier at first, responsibility carries the power to change what happens next. The world doesn't slow down when you're tired. The alarm rings and you're already behind. You drag yourself out of bed, hoping the world might be a little gentler today. But the commute is still crowded, messages are waiting, and the day demands the same as it always does. Tired or not, life keeps moving. The world doesn't slow down when you're exhausted. Fatigue has no influence on time. The clock doesn't tick more slowly because you need rest. Responsibilities don't shrink because your energy has run out. Work carries on, families need attention, and deadlines stay fixed. It can feel unfair, almost indifferent, but it is simply how life operates. This reality is why exhaustion is so dangerous. Push long enough without pause, and the body forces its own stop, through illness, burnout, or collapse. Many discover too late that waiting for the world to adjust is pointless. The only control lies in how you manage your own pace within it. Rest, then, is not luxury, it is protection. Choosing to pause, to sleep, to say no, or to set limits isn't weakness. It's how you survive in a world that won't pause for you. Those who learn this early carry their weight differently. They conserve strength for what matters and recover enough to keep moving. The world doesn't slow down when you're tired. That truth may be harsh, but it carries perspective. If life won't adjust to you, you must adjust for yourself. In the end, the choice is between collapsing under the weight of constant demands or stepping back long enough to keep going. You can outgrow people you thought were forever. You flip through old photos and recognize faces that once felt inseparable from your life. Friends you spent every day with, people you were certain would always be close. Now, years later, many of those connections are gone. Not because of betrayal or conflict, but because you grew. And growth doesn't always move in the same direction. Life has a way of pulling people onto different paths. Careers lead to new cities. Priorities shift as families form or ambitions change. Even small differences, how time is spent, what values matter most, create distance that friendship alone can't always bridge. What once held you together quietly fades. This isn't a failure, though it can feel like one. We're taught to believe that real friendships or love should last forever. But the truth is that not every bond is meant to survive every season. Some were only ever meant to carry us through a particular chapter. Letting go often comes with guilt, but it doesn't erase the value of what came before. The laughter, the lessons, the moments shared, they still shaped you. Outgrowing someone doesn't mean they didn't matter. It means their role in your life was complete. You can outgrow people you thought were forever. That truth is painful, but it also makes space for the relationships that fit the person you are now. Some people are chapters, not the entire story, and recognizing that frees you to carry the memories with gratitude while walking forward unburdened. Not everyone matures at the same pace. At reunions, the differences often stand out. Some friends talk about careers, families, or long-term plans. Others still chase the same routines they had years ago, unchanged by time. The gap feels surprising, but it speaks to a simple truth. Not everyone matures at the same pace. Age doesn't guarantee growth. Two people can live the same number of years and walk away with completely different lessons. For some, hardship forces responsibility early. For others, comfort delays it. Growth is shaped less by time itself and more by how someone responds to what life places in front of them. You see it in relationships. One person ready to settle down, another still searching for the next thrill. You see it at work. One colleague steady under pressure, another quick to anger. These contrasts aren't always about right or wrong. They simply show that people arrive at different stages on their own timelines. It can be frustrating when someone close to you isn't where you hope they'd be. But pushing them forward rarely works. Maturity can't be forced. It's realized. And comparing your own path to others only distracts you from continuing your own growth. Not everyone matures at the same pace. Sometimes that truth disappoints. Sometimes it humbles. But understanding it helps you meet people where they are, without letting their pace slow your own. Growth may not be equal, but it's always possible, for them and for you. Someone always has it worse than you, and better. You sit in traffic, irritated at the delay, until you notice someone pulled over with a stalled engine. Later, at home, you scroll through your phone and see a friend exploring a city you've never been to. In moments like these, the contrast is obvious. Someone always has it worse than you, and someone always has it better. Life constantly shifts between these two perspectives. Whatever burden you carry, there's another person facing something heavier: illness, grief, or circumstances beyond their control. And whatever milestone you're proud of, there's someone who has already gone further, faster, or higher. The danger lies in leaning too far in either direction. Focusing only on those worse off can dull ambition, convincing you that it could be worse is enough. Focusing only on those ahead can breed envy, making progress feel like failure by comparison. Neither view tells the whole story. The real value of this truth is balance. Seeing those who struggle more can teach gratitude for what you already have. Seeing those who've achieved more can spark drive to keep moving. Together, they remind you that your place on the spectrum isn't fixed. You're still in motion. This doesn't mean dismissing your pain or downplaying your success. Both matter. But remembering the wider picture grounds you. You are not at the bottom. and you are not at the top. You are part of a human continuum where everyone is both behind someone and ahead of someone else. Someone always has it worse than you and better. Keeping that perspective steadies you. It encourages humility, gratitude, and the clarity to focus on your own path without losing yourself in comparisons. Happiness is temporary, so is sadness. Human emotions are not fixed states, they're moving tides. Neuroscientists describe this as the hedonic treadmill. The brain adapts to both highs and lows, always pulling us back toward balance. Joy never lasts forever, but neither does despair. Life keeps moving, and feelings rise and fall with it. This truth can be unsettling when it comes to happiness. We want joy to last, to bottle it and hold it permanently. But it's the fleeting nature of happiness that makes it precious. A smile, a moment of connection, or a celebration wouldn't mean as much if it were permanent. On the other side, this truth brings relief in sadness. Pain feels permanent in the moment, but time softens it. Even the hardest losses gradually become bearable. Just as happiness fades, so does suffering. Recognizing this cycle changes how we live. Instead of chasing happiness endlessly, we can savor it while it's here. Instead of drowning in sadness, we can remind ourselves it won't last forever. Happiness is temporary, so is sadness. Accepting both gives us perspective, not to cling to the highs or fear the lows, but to understand that life is always moving, always shifting, and never fixed in one feeling for long. Compliments fade, criticism lingers. Human memory is not neutral. Psychologists call this the negativity bias. The brain pays more attention to threats than rewards, because throughout history, survival depended on remembering danger. A single harsh word becomes magnified, while praise often slips away. In daily life, this imbalance creates frustration. A worker might receive 10 compliments for their performance, but it's the one piece of negative feedback that keeps them awake at night. In relationships, years of kind words can be overshadowed by one careless insult. Compliments provide warmth, but criticism cuts deeper. This truth doesn't mean compliments are meaningless. They matter in the moment, and they build a foundation of support. But they rarely have the lasting weight of criticism. That's why careless words can cause damage long after they're spoken, and why deliberate cruelty can shape someone's self-image for years. Understanding this truth encourages caution in how we speak to others. A single moment of harshness can undo months of encouragement. And it also challenges us to manage our own minds, learning to let criticism inform rather than define us, and to intentionally hold on to praise instead of dismissing it. Compliments fade, criticism lingers. Knowing this helps us tread carefully with our words and more gently with ourselves. Because while criticism may echo louder, we still have the choice to decide how much space it takes in our lives. Being busy isn't the same as being productive. The day slips away in a blur. Emails answered, calls attended, lists checked. By evening, you're drained. Yet when you pause to reflect, nothing of real importance has moved forward. It's in that moment the truth comes into focus. Being busy isn't the same as being productive. Busyness offers the comfort of activity. Filling every hour feels like progress because effort is visible. But effort without direction is just motion. Productivity, by contrast, is about outcomes, the quiet work that brings you closer to meaningful goals, even if it doesn't fill the calendar. The difference shows everywhere. Offices run on back-to-back meetings but struggle to deliver results. Students highlight pages of notes without actually learning. At home, Entire days get swallowed by chores while personal projects gather dust. Busy feels active, but productive feels impactful. Often, busyness becomes a shield. Small tasks are quick, manageable, and safe. They distract from the discomfort of tackling harder problems, the kind that demand focus, creativity, or risk. It's easier to check 10 minor items than to take one meaningful step forward. But only the meaningful steps shift the direction of your life. Recognizing this divide requires intention. It means asking not just, "What am I doing?" but, "Why am I doing it?" The goal is not to fill time, but to use it. True productivity often looks quieter. Fewer tasks, chosen deliberately, carried out with purpose. Being busy isn't the same as being productive. One consumes energy, the other creates change. And at the end of the day, it's not the hours you filled that matter, it's the progress you made. Jealousy reveals more about you than about them. You scroll through social media and see someone celebrating a promotion, a trip, or a new relationship. Outwardly, you keep scrolling. Inwardly, a quiet voice asks, "Why not me?" That's when the truth shows itself. Jealousy reveals more about you than about them. Jealousy feels like it's directed at others, their happiness, their progress, their luck. But underneath, it's a reflection of your own unmet desires. Envy at a colleague's success points to your own ambitions. Discomfort at someone's relationship highlights what you long for. The emotion isn't a window into their life, it's a mirror into your own. This pattern is visible everywhere. Friendships strain not because one person achieved more, but because the other can't face what that success stirs inside. Workplaces fill with criticism that's really envy in disguise. Even in families, tension often grows less from unfairness than from comparison. Again and again, jealousy says more about what we want than about what others have. The hard part is admitting it. But once recognized, jealousy stops being just a burden. It can point you toward what matters. It can show where effort is needed, or where avoidance has kept you from moving forward. Instead of being a source of resentment, it can become a signal for growth. Jealousy reveals more about you than about them, and when you stop treating it as an attack on others, you start seeing it as a message about yourself. Their success doesn't take anything from you. It simply reflects what you've been waiting to build. What you tolerate is what you'll get. You let a coworker interrupt you during meetings, telling yourself it isn't worth the trouble. You excuse a friend for cancelling plans again, even though it bothers you. You stay silent when treated unfairly, hoping it won't happen next time. Slowly, a pattern takes shape. What you tolerate is what you'll get. People learn how to treat you not by what you ask for, but by what you allow. Boundaries aren't only words, they're enforced by action. When disrespect or neglect goes unchecked, it doesn't fade away. It becomes the expectation. What once felt like a one-off slips quietly into routine. The principle applies everywhere. In workplaces, long hours become standard when no one pushes back. In families, unhealthy dynamics linger because they're never named. Even with ourselves, the habits we permit, procrastination, excuses, shortcuts, set the tone for what our lives become. Tolerance isn't neutral, it's a signal. Changing this requires discomfort. It may mean speaking up when it feels easier to stay quiet. It may mean setting limits others don't like. Sometimes it means leaving situations that refuse to change. But by holding firm, you create space for respect, accountability, and healthier connections. What you tolerate is what you'll get. That truth can feel harsh, but it's also empowering. Every time you raise your standards, you teach others and yourself how you expect to be treated. And over time, that choice shapes not just relationships, but the life you're willing to accept. A good name takes years to build and seconds to ruin. Think of someone in your community who's known for reliability, the neighbor who always helps, the colleague who never misses a deadline, the friend who keeps their word. That reputation didn't appear overnight. It was built slowly, piece by piece, through consistent actions over time. Yet all it would take is one careless mistake, one broken promise, or one lapse in judgment for that image to collapse. That's the brutal reality. A good name takes years to build and seconds to ruin. Reputation is fragile because it lives in the perceptions of others. Trust and respect grow gradually through repeated proof, but once damaged, they're remembered instantly. Psychologists call this the stickiness of negativity. People tend to recall failures and betrayals more vividly than steady reliability. One misstep can outweigh countless good deeds. This truth shows itself everywhere. A business can thrive for decades, then collapse after a single scandal. A leader can inspire trust for years, only to see it vanish after one poor decision. Even in personal life, one lie or betrayal can overshadow years of honesty. Rebuilding trust is possible, but it is a long uphill climb, often without full recovery. The lesson is not to live in fear of mistakes, but to treat reputation as precious. Guarding it means making careful choices, acknowledging errors quickly, and staying consistent even when it's inconvenient. Because once it's damaged, no explanation or excuse can fully erase the memory of the fall. A good name takes years to build and seconds to ruin. That truth may feel unforgiving, but it's also what gives reputation its value. When protected, it becomes one of the most powerful assets a person can carry through life. Forgiving yourself is harder than forgiving others. You might let a friend off the hook when they forget a birthday. You may forgive a family member after a sharp exchange of words. But when the mistake is your own, a chance missed, a careless comment, a wrong decision, the weight lingers. Forgiving yourself is often harder than forgiving anyone else. We tend to be our own harshest judges. Others may move on quickly, but we replay our missteps again and again, keeping them alive long after the moment has passed. What for others is a single event becomes for us a repeating story. Part of the struggle comes from identity. When someone else stumbles, it's easier to see the action as separate from the person. When we stumble, it feels like a reflection of who we are. Guilt becomes tied to our sense of self, making it far harder to let go. The pattern shows up everywhere. A parent who can't stop second-guessing choices from years ago. A professional who keeps returning to one failure despite decades of success. The hardest forgiveness is rarely what we offer others. It's the grace we extend to ourselves. Self-forgiveness isn't about erasing responsibility. It's about recognizing that mistakes don't define the entirety of who we are. They can remain as lessons without becoming lifelong sentences. Without it, regret hardens into a prison. With it, mistakes become teachers. Forgiving yourself is harder than forgiving others. But once you learn to release the grip of regret, you create the space to live with less weight, to grow without constant self-punishment, and to move forward without yesterday chained to your back. Comfort now creates pain later. You skip the workout because the couch feels easier. You put off the assignment for just one more day. You spend instead of saving because it feels good in the moment. Each of these choices feels harmless, even pleasant. But over time, they build into something heavier, Comfort taken now often turns into pain later. Comfort has an appeal we all recognize. It soothes immediately, whether through rest, distraction, or indulgence. The problem is that many choices that feel good today carry costs that show up tomorrow. Missed exercise becomes poor health. Procrastination grows into panic. Overspending turns into debt. The bill doesn't arrive instantly, but it always arrives. This pattern is everywhere. Students who avoid the grind of study face the stress of last-minute cramming. Workers who dodge tough conversations end up with years of frustration. In health, quick meals and shortcuts accumulate into long-term problems. What seems like relief now quietly plants the seeds of struggle later. That doesn't mean comfort has no value. Rest and ease are necessary parts of life. But when comfort becomes the constant choice, growth slows, resilience weakens, and the future pays the price. Choosing temporary discomfort, effort, discipline, honesty creates a very different outcome. Difficulty in the moment, but strength and freedom later. Comfort now creates pain later. The trade-off is unavoidable. You either carry the weight of effort today, or you carry the weight of regret tomorrow. One passes, the other lingers. Talent is wasted without consistency. You've probably met someone like this, a gifted student who breezes through exams, or an athlete with natural ability who outshines others without much practice. At first, their talent seems untouchable, but as time passes, the ones who stay consistent often surpass the ones who rely only on talent. That's the difficult truth. Talent is wasted without consistency. Talent can open doors, but it doesn't keep them open. Skill gives an early advantage, but without steady practice, it fades. Musicians who don't rehearse lose their sharpness. Writers who only wait for inspiration never finish their work. Athletes who skip training see their performance decline. The distance between potential and achievement is closed not by brilliance, but by discipline. Consistency doesn't look dramatic. It's built through the small, repeated actions, day after day, year after year, that slowly compound into lasting results. It may not draw attention in the moment, but it turns raw ability into excellence. This is why many promising careers stall. People lean too heavily on their gifts until those gifts aren't enough. Meanwhile, those with fewer advantages keep showing up, keep learning, and eventually move ahead. In the long run, persistence outpaces potential. Talent is wasted without consistency. Recognizing this truth shifts the focus away from waiting for perfect moments and toward building habits that carry you forward. Talent sparks possibility, but consistency keeps it alive. In the end, it isn't what you can do once that defines you, it's what you can sustain. That's what transforms promise into progress and talent into something real. Some wounds never fully heal. You might notice it in the smallest triggers. A song plays, and suddenly you're back inside a memory you thought you'd left behind. A street corner reminds you of someone you no longer see. The pain may not be as sharp as it once was, but it's still there. That's the difficult truth. Some wounds never fully heal. Time softens pain, but it doesn't erase it. Grief, betrayal, regret. These experiences leave traces that resurface without warning. Just like a scar on the body, the wound closes, but sensitivity remains. It becomes part of you, shaping how you see the world and how you move through it. This truth is visible everywhere. A parent who loses a child learns to live again, but the absence never disappears. Someone who has been betrayed may open their heart again, but a quiet caution always lingers. These wounds don't vanish, they become woven into who we are. Acknowledging this isn't hopelessness, it's honesty. Pretending time erases everything only deepens the frustration when old pain resurfaces. Accepting that some wounds remain allows us to treat ourselves with more patience. Healing doesn't always mean returning to how things were. Sometimes it means learning to live alongside the mark left behind. Some wounds never fully heal. That may sound heavy, but it's also what defines resilience. People don't survive by erasing the past. They survive by carrying it forward, adapting around it, and proving that even with scars, life continues. Your feelings don't change facts. You might dread an exam, hoping the questions will turn out easier than they are. Or you might convince yourself a risky choice will work simply because you want it to. But when the results arrive, reality doesn't bend. That's the difficult truth. Your feelings don't change facts. Emotions are powerful. They shape how we see the world, influence our choices, and even color our memories. But they are not the same as reality. Fear doesn't make something more dangerous. Confidence doesn't make an idea more effective. Anger doesn't make you right. Facts stay fixed no matter what emotions we attach to them. Everyday life makes this clear. The scale shows the same number whether you're proud or disappointed. A deadline comes whether you feel ready or not. A relationship changes only through actions, not through wishing. Feelings can inspire, but they cannot rewrite what exists. The trap is easy to fall into. We live through emotions, so they feel like truth. But mistaking emotion for fact often leads to poor decisions, denying problems that are real, or believing certainty alone guarantees success. This doesn't mean emotions don't matter. They do. They guide, they warn, they motivate. But outcomes are decided by reality, not by what we hope reality should be. Your feelings don't change facts. Accepting this makes life clearer. It allows emotion to have its place without confusing it for truth. And in that clarity lies strength, the ability to face reality as it is, steady and unmoved, no matter how you feel about it. You can't control how others treat you, only how you react. Someone cuts you off in traffic. A colleague brushes aside your idea. A friend forgets to return a call. In those moments, frustration rises, and the instinct is to demand change from them. But there's a truth that never shifts. You can't control how others treat you, only how you respond. Every person acts from forces you can't see. Stress, values, habits, pressures you'll never fully know. Their choices are theirs. Sometimes they'll act with kindness, sometimes with disregard. Trying to bend their behavior to your will is an endless fight, one that always leaves you drained. What you can influence is your own reaction. You may not stop someone from being dismissive, but you can choose whether to mirror it, rise above it, or simply walk away. That moment of choice is where real control lives. This pattern shows itself everywhere. In workplaces, fairness can't be guaranteed, but professionalism can. In families, conflicts flare, but one person's restraint can prevent escalation. Even on the street, a pause before reacting can decide whether the moment ends in calm or chaos. Recognizing this truth isn't about excusing poor behavior. It's about refusing to hand over your power. The actions of others are unpredictable. Your response is not. You can't control how others treat you, but you can decide how you carry yourself in the face of it. And over time, that choice shapes not only how others see you, but how you see yourself. Tomorrow isn't promised. You make plans for next month. You delay a call with a friend until the weekend. You assume there will be more time, because there usually is. But the truth is far less certain. Tomorrow isn't promised. We move through life as if days stretch endlessly ahead, saving words, delaying dreams, postponing what matters most. Yet life has always been fragile. A sudden accident, an unexpected illness, or a twist of circumstance can bring change no one anticipated. The calendar is an illusion of control. Time doesn't owe us another page. Across history and in daily life, this reality repeats. Letters were never sent, conversations never had, ambitions left waiting for later. But later never came. What lingers after is not just loss, but the weight of what was postponed. Understanding this isn't about living recklessly, it's about clarity. When you see time as limited, priorities shift. Arguments that once seemed important lose their hold. Gratitude feels urgent. A simple dinner with loved ones, a walk in the evening, a moment of laughter. These become treasures, not afterthoughts. Tomorrow isn't promised. Accepting that truth doesn't remove the future, it simply brings the present into focus. It urges us to speak, to begin, to appreciate, not someday, but now. Because the only time life guarantees is the moment you hold in your hands. And making the most of it is the surest way to live without regret. Popularity fades faster than character lasts. In school, you probably remember the popular kids, the ones with the loudest laughs, the biggest circles, the names that everyone seemed to know. But years later, many of those names fade. What lingers isn't who drew the most attention, but how people acted when it mattered. Popularity fades faster than character lasts. Popularity is built on attention, and attention doesn't stay still. Social circles change, new faces arrive, and what once seemed important is quickly replaced. The charm or status that makes someone stand out in one season rarely carries into the next. Character, on the other hand, travels with you. Honesty, respect, and reliability don't rely on shifting crowds. They shape how people remember you across time. Someone admired for kindness in youth is often respected decades later. But those remembered only for popularity are rarely remembered for long. You can see this everywhere. In workplaces, the person who networks widely may get noticed early, but the colleague who quietly shows consistency, helps others, and acts with integrity is the one people count on. In families, it's not the most entertaining relative who leaves the deepest mark. It's the one who could be trusted. Popularity is temporary by design. Character endures because it leaves an imprint on others long after attention moves on. When the spotlight fades, and it always does, what remains is not how many people knew your name, but how you carried yourself. And in the long run, that weighs more than any moment of applause. People project their insecurities onto you. You share an accomplishment, and instead of congratulations, someone brushes it off as luck. You set a boundary, and they call you selfish. You speak with confidence, and they accuse you of arrogance. In moments like these, the criticism often reveals less about you and more about them. People project their insecurities onto others. Projection is when someone takes the doubts, fears, or traits they dislike in themselves and pushes them outward. A person struggling with inadequacy might belittle your success. Someone uneasy about their own honesty may accuse you of being deceptive. Their judgments are less a reflection of your character than a mirror of their own struggles. This is why criticism can feel so misplaced. A reliable employee is labelled unreliable by a boss who cuts corners. A generous person is accused of manipulation by someone who fears being exposed. The pattern is consistent. The traits people deny in themselves often become the ones they assign to others. Recognizing this doesn't make projection easier to endure, but it helps separate what belongs to you from what doesn't. Not all feedback carries truth. Some criticism holds value, pointing toward growth. But much of it is noise, others handing you pieces of themselves they refuse to face. People project their insecurities onto you. That truth is harsh, but it's also liberating. You don't have to carry what isn't yours. By seeing projection for what it is, you keep your self-image rooted in reality rather than in someone else's reflection. Lies eventually catch up. Lies provide a kind of temporary shelter. They soften awkward moments, avoid conflict, or deflect responsibility. In the moment, they feel like an easy escape. But every lie creates distance between appearance and reality, and that distance has to be managed. The more lies accumulate, the heavier the burden of keeping them aligned. Eventually, the truth leaks through, sometimes by contradiction, sometimes by accident, and sometimes because memories simply don't hold together. The strain of lying is constant. While truth requires no rehearsal, dishonesty demands effort, details to remember, behaviors to adjust, stories to maintain. Over time, this makes lies fragile. A single slip is enough to unravel them, often with consequences more damaging than the truth would have caused at the start. Life offers countless reminders. Leaders who built influence on false promises were eventually undone when reality exposed the gaps. Professionals who exaggerated accomplishments faced downfall once their results failed to match. Even in families and friendships, dishonesty rarely stays hidden. When it surfaces, it leaves trust fractured and hard to rebuild. Honesty, by contrast, can sting in the moment, but it carries no maintenance cost. It may disrupt, but it doesn't collapse under its own weight. Lies promise ease, but deliver complexity. Truth demands courage, but sustains itself. Lies eventually catch up. That's why honesty, even when difficult, remains the more reliable path. Because while lies crumble under time, truth endures. Not everyone deserves your loyalty. You stand by a friend through their hardest days, answering late-night calls, listening to the same struggles, showing up without question. But when life turns and you need someone, the silence is deafening. Moments like this reveal a truth many avoid. Not everyone deserves your loyalty. Loyalty is powerful when it's mutual. It builds trust, strengthens bonds, and makes relationships resilient. But when loyalty flows only in one direction, it shifts from strength to weakness. Giving endlessly to someone who takes without returning leaves you drained, not supported. This imbalance appears everywhere. Employees dedicate years to companies that replace them without hesitation. Friends cling to people who consistently let them down. Families sometimes demand loyalty by default, even when their actions show little care in return. In each case, devotion is placed not where it is earned, but where it is expected. Loyalty is not about blind endurance, it is about reciprocity. It should be anchored in respect, honesty, and effort on both sides. When those qualities are missing, holding on doesn't make you noble, it makes you stuck. Recognizing that not everyone deserves your loyalty doesn't mean closing yourself off or refusing to care. It means choosing carefully who has proven they value it. True loyalty is rare, and when offered to the right people, it deepens connection. But given carelessly, it becomes self-sacrifice with no purpose. Not everyone deserves your loyalty. Accepting that frees you to invest in the relationships that lift you up, instead of those that slowly wear you down. The world rewards leverage, not fairness. You've probably watched it happen. One person works hard, follows every rule, and still remains in the same place. Another, with fewer hours and less effort, advances quickly because they had the right contact, the right moment, or the right resource. It feels unfair because it is. The world doesn't move according to fairness. It moves according to leverage. Fairness is an ideal. It suggests that effort and merit should bring equal reward. But life rarely honors that balance. What shapes outcomes is leverage, the ability to turn what you have into something greater. A single introduction can create more opportunity than years of unnoticed work. A well-timed decision can outweigh endless preparation. Leverage takes many forms. It can be skill that others need, capital that multiplies effort, or a network that accelerates trust. It doesn't erase the value of hard work, but it determines whose work actually changes outcomes. That's why two people can labor equally, yet one advances while the other waits. Examples are everywhere. A business with a recognizable name will outsell a smaller competitor, even if the product is weaker. An artist with a platform will reach audiences faster than one with equal talent but no reach. Influence, resources, and position often bend results in ways effort alone cannot. This truth is not meant to diminish fairness, it's meant to highlight reality. Waiting for fairness leaves you frustrated. Building leverage gives you agency. Skills, relationships, and timing can all become multipliers if used wisely. The world rewards leverage, not fairness. And when you understand that, you stop waiting for balance and start creating advantage. Success can isolate you. At first, success feels like a celebration. You reach a goal, earn recognition, or step into a role you've been chasing for years. For a moment, it seems like everyone is proud. But as time passes, something shifts. Some friends grow quieter, conversations lose their ease, and you realize not everyone celebrates when you move ahead. Success, for all its rewards, can also leave you standing apart. The reason is simple. Success changes the landscape. Shared struggles and familiar routines no longer connect you in the same way. While you adapt to new challenges and opportunities, others may see your progress as a reminder of what they haven't done, or what they fear they cannot do. Admiration often mixes with comparison, and comparison creates distance. This isn't rare. Business leaders often speak about friendships that faded as their ventures grew. Artists recall how recognition altered the way people approach them. Even in everyday workplaces, a promotion can make old colleagues act differently, as if success itself has drawn an invisible line. The separation isn't always born of resentment. Sometimes it's simply that paths diverge. Success demands new habits, new commitments, and sometimes new circles. Not every relationship is built to stretch that far. Success can isolate you. Accepting this truth doesn't mean shunning growth. It means preparing for the changes it brings. It means holding on to the people who remain genuine, while opening yourself to new connections that align with where you're headed. Because success is never only about what you gain, it's also about what you leave behind. You can't win every battle. You spend nights preparing for a presentation, polish every detail, and deliver it flawlessly. Yet the client chooses another option. Or you stand firm in an argument, convinced of your reasoning, only to watch the decision go the other way. These moments remind us of a truth most would rather avoid. You can't win every battle. Life is not measured only by effort. Outcomes bend to timing, circumstance, and the choices of others, forces no individual can fully control. You may give everything and still walk away without the result you wanted. That isn't failure. It's the nature of living in a world where countless variables move beyond your reach. History is full of such reminders. Brilliant generals lost wars despite sound strategy. Innovators with the better idea often lost to those with better resources. Even in everyday life, from office politics to family disputes, the outcome isn't always determined by who is right, but by whose position holds more weight at that moment. The danger lies in believing you should win every battle. That belief breeds frustration, bitterness, and burnout. Those who endure are the ones who learn to accept loss when it comes, take what lessons it offers, and redirect their energy toward the next opportunity. You can't win every battle. Accepting that frees you from the endless pressure of perfection and constant victory. It gives you the clarity to choose which struggles are worth the fight and which can be set down. Because in the long run, resilience isn't built by winning them all. It's built by knowing which defeats you can carry and which victories are worth the cost. Regret often comes from the things you didn't do. An unopened letter, a trip left unbooked, a conversation delayed until it was too late. These are the moments that often echo the loudest in memory. Strangely, it isn't the failures that weigh the heaviest over time, but the choices never made. Regret often comes from the things left undone. Taking action, even when it fails, leaves something behind, a lesson, resilience, sometimes even pride in the attempt. Failure is painful in the moment, but it creates experiences to carry forward. Inaction offers nothing. It leaves only a blank space where a story could have been, and the lingering question of what might have happened if you had tried. History and personal reflection both confirm this. People rarely look back on life lamenting the risks they took, even when they fell short. More often, the lasting regret comes from the words unsaid. The ventures never started. The doors never opened. Playing it safe feels comfortable in the moment, but comfort often turns into longing later. This truth isn't a call for recklessness. It's a reminder that hesitation can be just as costly as failure. Missed chances don't return in the same form. Time moves forward, and the moment passes with it. Regret often comes from the things you didn't do. Remembering that changes how we approach choices today. A failed attempt becomes a lesson. But an untouched opportunity remains an unanswered question, one that can follow you for the rest of your life. The world doesn't pause for your pain. Morning breaks whether you are ready for it or not. The sun rises, traffic builds, and conversations hum in the background. Even on the days when you feel too heavy to move, life around you carries on. It doesn't wait for anyone's grief to subside. This is one of the most jarring parts of loss or heartbreak, the mismatch between your inner collapse and the outer world's steady motion. Inside, everything feels paused. Outside, nothing is. The contrast makes sorrow sharper, as if the world refuses to acknowledge what has shattered. But this isn't cruelty. It is simply how life works. Time does not bend itself to individual suffering. Streets don't grow quiet because one person is in mourning. Work doesn't freeze when a single heart is broken. The current of life continues, always forward. That reality hurts, but it also reveals something deeper. Because the world doesn't stop, you are never left behind entirely. Its constant motion can feel harsh, yet it also creates the path that carries you forward. Even when grief feels endless, the rhythm of days keeps offering another chance, another moment, another small step. Learning to live with this truth means carrying pain into a world that refuses to pause for it. At first, that feels impossible. But over time, walking within that rhythm is how healing takes root. The world moves on, and slowly you find that you can move with it. No one else can live your life for you. From the moment we're born, life feels crowded with voices telling us which way to go. Parents shape early choices, teachers set expectations, and later on, Workplaces hand us deadlines and routines. At every stage, the world tries to guide, persuade, or even dictate our direction. But when all the noise fades, one reality remains. No one else can live your life for you. Advice is easy to find. People will always have opinions about what you should do, who you should be, or where you should head. Some of it comes from love, some from tradition, and some from their own fears or ambitions. But no matter how convincing those voices sound, the steps still belong to you. If you walk a path only because someone else said you should, the weight of that choice is still yours to carry. History is filled with people who discovered this truth too late. The gifted artist who buried their style to please critics. The professional who climbed high in a career chosen by family only to feel empty at the top. Even in everyday life, it shows up quietly, saying yes when you wanted to say no, staying when you wanted to leave, postponing dreams because others didn't believe in them. The hardest part of owning your life is accepting that responsibility cannot be outsourced. No friend can feel your regret. No mentor can carry your missed chances. No family can stand in for your satisfaction or your disappointment. Those things belong to you alone. And that is where the freedom lies. Because once you stop waiting for others to shape your path, you gain the power to create it yourself. The mistakes, the victories, the stories, they are yours. And they always will be. Growth demands letting go of who you were. You might notice it when you look back at old photos or revisit places that once defined you. The music you loved, the people you spent time with, the habits that filled your days, they don't all fit anymore. That's the quiet signal of change. Growth demands letting go of who you were. We often imagine growth as addition, new skills, new opportunities, new perspectives. But real growth also involves subtraction. The version of you that fit last year, or 5 years ago, can't always carry the weight of where you're going. Old routines, outdated beliefs, even familiar identities sometimes have to be left behind. This truth shows up in everyday life. A student becomes a professional, and the casual rhythms of youth give way to responsibility. Someone leaving a toxic relationship must shed the patterns that once kept them attached. Even success brings this demand. Reaching a higher level often requires releasing comfort zones that made sense in the past. Letting go isn't easy. It can feel like abandoning parts of yourself or betraying the person you once were. But holding on too tightly keeps you stuck in chapters that no longer serve you. Growth, by definition, requires change, and change often means leaving behind what no longer fits. Growth demands letting go of who you were, accepting that truth makes transformation less painful. You don't erase the past, you honor it for carrying you this far. But you also recognize that the past isn't designed to carry you forward. To step into who you can become, you must release who you've already been. People remember your failures longer than your kindness. Kindness, while valuable, tends to fade into the background because it's expected. Small acts of decency rarely make headlines. But when someone stumbles, the story sticks. Failures feel sharper, easier to recall, and more likely to be repeated in conversation. It's why reputations can crumble overnight, even after years of steady goodwill. This isn't because people are cruel by nature. It's because the human mind pays more attention to what disrupts the norm. Kindness blends in with the flow of daily life, while failure stands out as an interruption. One broken promise can overshadow 100 kept. One public error can outweigh countless private efforts. You see this truth everywhere. Athletes remembered not for their wins, but for a costly mistake. Leaders judged less by steady years than by one bad decision. Even in personal relationships, a single moment of betrayal can leave a deeper mark than years of loyalty. It's a harsh reality, but not without guidance. If people remember failures longer, then protecting your integrity and handling mistakes carefully becomes essential. Owning errors, correcting them quickly, and maintaining consistency helps soften their weight over time. People remember your failures longer than your kindness. Accepting this doesn't mean abandoning kindness. It means understanding its quiet role. Kindness builds trust slowly, while failure tests it suddenly. The challenge is not to stop being kind, but to live in a way where your character speaks louder than your stumbles. Most people settle instead of chasing what they want. Walk into any cafe and you'll hear it in passing conversations. Someone mentions the trip they never took, the dream job they once imagined, or the business idea they tucked away years ago. The words carry no urgency now, just resignation. Not because the dreams were small, but because they were quietly set aside. This is how most people live. They settle instead of chasing what they want. Settling feels safe. It promises stability, predictability, and fewer chances to fail. The steady job is easier than building something uncertain. The familiar relationship is less frightening than starting over. What begins as a choice for security gradually turns into a pattern, and that pattern becomes a life. The alternative, chasing what you want, demands more. It asks for late nights, for risk, for the willingness to stumble and begin again. It requires tolerating doubt and uncertainty. Many see that cost and step back, convincing themselves that wanting less is wiser than striving for more. Examples appear everywhere. Musicians trade their instruments for office desks. Students with bold ideas reshape them into safer careers. Couples stay together not because it feels right, but because leaving feels harder. And each time, the gap between what they wanted and what they accepted grows wider. Settling isn't always failure. Sometimes compromise is necessary. Sometimes it brings stability. But when it becomes the default, when people stop even trying, the cost is invisible but heavy. It's the lingering thought years later of what could have been. Most people settle instead of chasing what they want. The truth isn't meant to condemn, but to awaken. Because while chasing carries the risk of failure, settling carries something worse, the quiet weight of a life only half lived. The mirror shows flaws you can't hide from. Before leaving the house, you catch a glimpse of yourself in the mirror, a wrinkle that wasn't there yesterday, a scar that never fades, or simply the exhaustion etched into your eyes. The reflection doesn't soften or flatter. It delivers the truth without filter. That's the reality. The mirror shows flaws you can't hide from. In the world outside, appearances can be managed. You can present confidence through clothing, posture, or carefully chosen words. But the mirror offers no stage, no audience. It reduces everything to honesty. Standing there, it's just you and what's real in that moment. And the truth goes deeper than the surface. The mirror is more than glass. It's a symbol. Just as it reveals physical imperfections, life reflects back the habits, choices, and character traits we'd prefer to ignore, missed commitments, neglected health, or patterns we pretend don't exist, eventually show up in ways we can't disguise. You can mislead others for a time, but you cannot mislead yourself forever. This encounter with truth can drive people in two directions. Some turn away, avoiding reflection, choosing distraction, denial, or endless busyness instead. Others lean in, using the discomfort as a call to act. The flaws are not a verdict of unworthiness. They are reminders of where growth begins. The mirror shows flaws you can't hide from. That fact may feel uncomfortable, but it is also freeing. Because once you see clearly, you have a choice: to remain the same or to begin changing. The mirror's role ends at reflection. What happens next, whether you step forward into growth or retreat back into avoidance, belongs entirely to you. And over time, that choice shapes not just what the mirror shows, but the person who stands before it. Time spent angry is never returned. An argument replays in your mind. You imagine the words you should have said, the perfect response that never came. Hours slip by while the tension sits heavy, stealing energy and peace. And when those hours are gone, they don't come back. That's the truth. Time spent angry is never returned. Anger is deceptive. In the moment, it feels powerful, like taking control, but it burns through focus the way fire burns through fuel. What's left afterward is exhaustion, distraction, and the quiet realization that nothing meaningful was gained. Think of the days lost after a fight with someone close. Even when reconciliation comes, the time spent seething remains wasted. Think of the projects left untouched, the opportunities missed, the simple joys overlooked, all sacrificed to frustration that never built anything lasting. Unlike money, which can be earned again, or possessions, which can be replaced, time offers no refund. This doesn't mean anger has no place. Sometimes it signals a boundary crossed or a wrong that must be addressed. But when anger lingers beyond its purpose, when it becomes a state of living rather than a spark for action, it quietly erodes the very life it claims to defend. The truth is simple. Time spent angry is never returned. You can't erase the hours consumed by bitterness, but you can choose how much more of your life you allow it to take. Calm, gratitude, and focus may not arrive as quickly as anger, but they build moments that endure. Every day offers only so many hours. Choosing to spend them in anger is a decision to hand them away forever. Choosing otherwise is how you reclaim them, turning fleeting moments into time that truly belongs to you. Life punishes procrastination. You tell yourself you'll start tomorrow. The assignment, the workout, the important call, it can all wait one more day. But then deadlines close in, opportunities disappear, and the weight of delay turns into stress. That's when the lesson becomes clear. Life punishes procrastination. Procrastination disguises itself as comfort. Putting things off feels harmless, even soothing, but the cost builds quietly. A missed deadline might mean a lost grade or a lost client. A delayed health check becomes a bigger problem later. Even relationships can wither when effort is postponed too long. Life has its own clock, and it rarely waits for hesitation. What makes procrastination so damaging is that its punishment is often disproportionate. Hours of delay can erase months of opportunity. A single moment of hesitation can close doors forever. Unlike small daily mistakes, procrastination compounds, creating consequences larger than the effort it would have taken to act. This truth plays out everywhere. Students cram in panic for exams they could have prepared for steadily. Professionals scramble at the last minute, producing work that could have been stronger with time. Even personal goals, learning a skill, building savings, improving health, slip away when later becomes never. Life punishes procrastination. Accepting this truth doesn't mean living in constant urgency. It means recognizing that action today protects you from regret tomorrow. Every task avoided becomes a debt, and eventually the bill arrives. The only way to avoid the cost is to do the work before it's due. Because in the end, procrastination never feels heavy in the moment. The punishment comes later, when opportunities are gone, when time has run out, and when the chance to act is no longer yours to take. Your potential means nothing without execution. Potential is seductive. It paints vivid pictures of what might be possible, a career waiting to unfold, a gift waiting to be recognized, a dream just within reach. But potential is only raw material. Left untouched, it gathers dust. The brutal truth is that potential without execution decays into nothing. History is littered with examples. Brilliant inventors whose ideas never left notebooks. Athletes who dazzled in youth but faded without training. Students called gifted who never pushed past the early praise. They had the raw material. What they lacked was the grind that turns talent into achievement. Execution doesn't glitter. It looks like repetition, practice, discipline, and patience. It's the painter showing up to a blank canvas again and again. The writer cutting whole chapters to sharpen a story. The worker refining small details no one else notices. Execution rarely feels grand in the moment, but it's the only thing that transforms promise into proof. Potential comforts us. It suggests greatness is possible. But execution challenges us because it demands effort now. Without it, potential becomes a trap, convincing us that what we could do somehow matters more than what we actually do. The truth is harsh. The world remembers results, not possibilities. Potential whispers. Execution speaks loudly, and only one leaves a mark. Dreams demand sacrifice you may not be willing to pay. Crowds cheer when the medal is lifted, when the product launches, when the curtain rises. Glory is what the world notices. But behind every moment like that lies a quieter truth. Dreams are paid for in hours no one applauds, with sacrifices that never make it into the highlight reel. Dreams are beautiful, precisely because they promise something greater than the ordinary. Yet greatness isn't free. To move closer to one vision means stepping away from something else. The student aiming high spends long nights alone in the library while friends gather elsewhere. The entrepreneur risks stability and sleep in exchange for the chance at building something larger. The artist gives years to practice before anyone pays attention. In each story, what's gained is tied directly to what's given up. The reality is sobering. Desire alone isn't enough. Almost everyone wants the reward. Far fewer are prepared to endure the cost. Setbacks, exhaustion, and missed comforts make the road longer than it looks from the outside. Many stop, not because the dream was unreachable, but because the price was heavier than expected. This truth isn't meant to discourage. It's meant to clarify. Every dream carries a bill. Some are worth paying. Others aren't. Knowing that difference shapes the path forward. Dreams demand sacrifice. They always have. The choice isn't whether sacrifice will be required, but whether you're willing to give what it takes. And when the applause fades, and some truths hurt more than lies. A letter, a phone call, a quiet conversation. Sometimes what arrives isn't comfort but clarity. The words themselves are simple, yet they land with the weight of stone. A diagnosis, a confession, a truth that shatters the illusion you held onto. In those moments it becomes clear. Certain truths cut far deeper than any lie ever could. Lies have a strange way of softening life. They buy time, delay pain, and let us linger in a version of reality that feels easier to carry. False assurances like, everything's fine, or maybe next time, don't change the facts, but they let us postpone meeting them. Truth, on the other hand, doesn't negotiate. It arrives bare, without cushioning, and forces us to confront what we would rather avoid. This is why honesty is so powerful and so brutal. It doesn't just inform, it reshapes. Hearing that a partner no longer loves you alters more than emotion. It changes the future you imagined. Learning you've been passed over for a role isn't just a rejection, it's a new path you didn't choose. Truth strips away hope built on illusion, leaving nothing to stand on but reality itself. And yet, as painful as it is, truth carries something lies never can: direction. Lies keep you circling, trapped in delay. Truth, even when devastating, is the first step toward adaptation. The wound it opens may hurt more in the moment, but it clears the ground for something stronger to grow. Some truths hurt more than lies. That is their nature, but it's also their value. Because while lies may shield you briefly, truth, however sharp, gives you the only solid ground on which to begin again. Being right doesn't mean you'll win. In every corner of life, there are moments when truth alone isn't enough. A professional presents the strongest case in a meeting, data lined up, logic airtight, yet the decision favors someone else. A friend makes the clearest point in an argument, but instead of resolution, the exchange ends in silence and distance. The lesson becomes unavoidable. Being right doesn't guarantee victory. Outcomes are rarely decided on correctness alone. Influence, timing, tone, and perception often weigh just as heavily. The world doesn't function like a scale where truth tips the balance by itself. Instead, decisions are shaped by who delivers the message, how it's received, and whether those listening are willing to accept it. History holds endless examples. Inventors with brilliant ideas saw them buried because others had stronger networks. Social movements carried undeniable truths, yet progress stalled until momentum, strategy, and persuasion aligned. Even within families and friendships, facts have ended conversations rather than mending them, not because they weren't true, but because they weren't heard in the right way. The uncomfortable reality is that truth without delivery can be powerless. Winning requires more than correctness. It requires communication that connects, diplomacy that softens resistance, and patience that waits for the right moment. Sometimes it even requires compromise, not because you were wrong, but because insisting on rightness alone closes the door to resolution. Being right doesn't mean you'll win. Accepting this fact reframes the goal. It's not only about holding truth, it's about carrying it across the finish line with strategy and empathy. In the end, rightness matters, but without influence, it risks being ignored, leaving the victory not to the truest voice, but to the one best heard. Popularity is temporary. Popularity has a way of feeling permanent when you're in it. The applause is loud, the attention constant, and it seems impossible to imagine it fading. But time has a habit of moving on, and with it, so does the crowd's gaze. The spotlight isn't designed to stay fixed. It shifts with new stories, new faces, new voices. What feels like the center of the world in one season often becomes a faint memory in the next. Social media makes this even sharper. Someone can gain immense attention one week and vanish into obscurity the next. This is not a modern phenomenon. Across centuries, the same pattern has played out. Celebrated leaders were eventually replaced. Artists who defined their generation were later overshadowed. Even athletes who broke records found their names slipping from everyday conversation once new champions emerged. The cycle repeats because attention is a tide, not a monument. closer to daily life, it's the same. The most admired classmate eventually leaves school. The standout employee moves on, and their recognition fades as someone else takes their place. The admiration that once felt permanent was only ever temporary. None of this makes popularity meaningless. It can bring joy, opportunity, and a sense of connection, but it becomes fragile when mistaken for something lasting. The applause fades. What remains is what you built while you had it, the work, the character, and the relationships that endure after the spotlight shifts away. Popularity is temporary. What lasts is what you create beyond it. Trust broken once rarely feels whole again. Trust is one of the most fragile currencies people exchange. It isn't signed on paper or secured with guarantees. It's built quietly, over time, through consistency, reliability, and belief. That's what makes it powerful, but also what makes it so vulnerable. A single betrayal can undo what years of loyalty once created. When trust is broken, something changes permanently. Apologies can be offered, forgiveness can even be extended, but the ease that once defined the bond rarely returns. What was natural becomes strained. What was seamless now carries hesitation. Even if the relationship survives, it is not the same. This truth plays out everywhere. A friend who reveals a secret may never be confided in again with the same openness. A partner who betrays loyalty can rebuild closeness, but suspicion lingers like a shadow. In the workplace, one dishonest moment often outweighs a record of strong performance. Broken trust may not end every connection, but it reshapes them, making interactions more cautious, more measured. The difficulty lies in memory. People can forgive, but forgetting is nearly impossible. Every promise afterward is coloured by the question, will it hold this time? That question, once planted, rarely disappears. To accept this truth isn't to live bitterly or deny second chances. It is to recognise the weight of trust when it is offered. Protecting it requires more care than repairing it ever could. Once cracked, the foundation may be patched, but the fracture line remains. Trust broken once rarely feels whole again. And that is precisely why it matters so deeply. Because trust, unlike most things, is not valuable because it is plentiful. It is valuable because it is fragile. You'll never have enough time for everything. Time has always been the great equalizer. Every person, no matter their wealth, ambition, or circumstance, wakes up with the same 24 hours. And yet, the demands of modern life quickly reveal a sobering truth. There will never be enough time to do everything. From childhood to adulthood, the list of expectations only grows. Study harder, build a career, nurture relationships, take care of health, stay informed, travel, save money, find purpose. Each goal may be worthy on its own, but placed together, they exceed what any single lifetime can reasonably hold. This imbalance shows up in small ways. The inbox never empties, the to-do list is rarely crossed out in full, and even leisure carries its own pressure. Books unread, places unvisited, conversations postponed. Time runs out faster than intentions can keep up. History echoes the same lesson. Leaders, artists, and thinkers who shaped entire eras still left behind unfinished projects, incomplete visions, and dreams they never touched. No one has ever mastered time. At best, they have learned to spend it wisely. The clarity in this truth is not meant to discourage. It is meant to sharpen perspective. If not everything can fit, then choices matter more than sheer effort. Time becomes less about trying to do it all and more about deciding what deserves to be done. There will never be enough time for everything, but there is always enough time for something. The work that aligns with purpose, the relationships that bring depth, the moments that make life feel alive. In the end, it isn't about conquering the clock. It's about living in a way where what matters most is given the hours it deserves. Regret ages faster than the body. You meet someone who looks young, but carries a heaviness in their eyes. They're not worn down by time, but by the weight of what they wish they had done differently. That's the quiet reality many discover. Regret ages faster than the body. The body ages slowly, marked by years. Wrinkles, grey hair, and slower steps arrive with time. But regret accelerates the process from the inside. Missed opportunities, words left unsaid, or choices avoided create an invisible burden. It doesn't just linger in memory. It shapes how a person carries themselves, how they see the future, and how fully they live in the present. This truth appears in subtle ways. A person who didn't pursue their passion may seem successful, but hollow. Someone who stayed silent in key moments might replay them endlessly, draining energy from today. Regret becomes a constant reminder of what might have been, stealing vitality long before age naturally would. The danger is that regret compounds. One missed chance becomes another, and over time, the accumulation creates a sense of being trapped by the past. Unlike physical aging, which is inevitable, this kind of aging can be avoided, but only by action. Regret ages faster than the body. Accepting this truth reminds us that the real cost of inaction isn't just lost opportunity, it's lost life. Taking risks, speaking up, and choosing courage over hesitation may not guarantee success, but they protect against the corrosive weight of what if. In the end, years will mark us all. But whether we age carrying the natural marks of time or the heavier burden of regret depends on the choices we make while we still can. Even love has limits. Love is often celebrated as endless, a force that can withstand anything, heal everything, and endure forever. But in real life, love is not limitless. It bends, it stretches, and for a time it may seem unbreakable, but eventually, every bond has a breaking point. That point usually arrives not in a single dramatic moment, but through repetition. Trust erodes after being broken too many times. Disrespect hardens into distance. Patterns of neglect slowly outweigh gestures of care. The affection may still exist, but its ability to sustain the relationship weakens with each crack. Examples surround us. Couples who once shared years of closeness drift apart when effort disappears. Friendships fade after disappointment turns into routine. Even family ties, often believed to be unshakable, can fray when harm outweighs connection. The presence of love alone isn't always enough to hold things together. This reality doesn't mean the love was false or shallow. It means love cannot carry everything on its own. For it to endure, it must be supported by respect, by effort, by trust. Without these foundations, even the deepest affection eventually breaks under the strain. The truth that love has limits can feel harsh, but it also carries clarity. It teaches that loyalty should not excuse betrayal, and that care must be reciprocated if a bond is to last. Recognizing these limits does not weaken love. It protects it. In the end, love is strong, but it is not indestructible. It thrives when nurtured, but it falters when taken for granted. Accepting that truth doesn't make love smaller, it makes it real. And in its reality lies the reminder that what is valued must also be protected. Discomfort is the price of growth. The first steps after a long pause are rarely graceful. Muscles resist, lungs protest, and the body begs to stop. That sting is easy to mistake for weakness, but it's actually evidence of progress beginning. Discomfort, in nearly every form of growth, is the unavoidable toll. Comfort offers stability, predictability, and ease. It shelters us from strain, but it also shelters us from change. Real progress demands friction, trying skills that aren't mastered yet, stepping into unfamiliar roles, facing fears instead of hiding from them. The unease that follows isn't failure. It's the cost of expansion. Nature shows this clearly. A muscle becomes stronger only after micro tears repair themselves. Seeds must break open to grow. Even a caterpillar must endure confinement before transformation. Growth and discomfort arrive hand in hand. One does not happen without the other. Daily life mirrors the same law. Careers advance when people take on projects they aren't fully prepared for. Personal discipline deepens when old habits are challenged. Even relationships grow when difficult conversations are faced instead of avoided. The pattern is constant. What feels uncomfortable today is often what creates strength tomorrow. Avoiding discomfort may seem safe, but it trades long-term possibility for short-term relief. Stagnation becomes the quiet price of ease. Those willing to embrace discomfort, however, learn resilience. They discover that struggle itself is not a barrier, but a bridge. Discomfort is the price of growth. Seeing it that way changes its meaning. Instead of a warning to retreat, it becomes proof of forward motion. Growth never comes free. It always asks for effort, patience, and the willingness to feel uneasy. And those willing to pay that price find that while comfort fades quickly, growth shapes a future that lasts. People respect strength, not excuses. A late arrival to a meeting followed by a string of explanations, traffic, weather, a hectic morning, rarely earns admiration. The same situation handled with a simple apology and immediate focus leaves a different impression. The contrast highlights a truth that cuts across every setting. Respect follows strength, not excuses. Excuses serve as shields. They soften blame and protect the ego, but they rarely inspire confidence. What people respond to is not how convincingly circumstances are explained, but how directly responsibility is taken. Strength shows itself in accountability, in persistence when conditions are difficult, and in the ability to act despite obstacles. History and everyday life echo this principle. Leaders who gained trust were not those who detailed why a challenge was impossible, but those who carried their teams through hardship anyway. Parents shape resilience in children less by narrating reasons for failure, and more by modeling persistence in the face of it. Even friendships strengthen when reliability replaces justification. This isn't to say excuses are always false. Often they are entirely valid. But repeated too often, even valid explanations erode credibility. Everyone encounters setbacks. What distinguishes people is whether they become defined by reasons or by responses. Respect grows where ownership is visible. The individual who admits error without defensiveness is trusted more than the one who insists on explanations. The colleague who adapts and delivers, despite difficulty, becomes dependable. Strength is not perfection. It is the willingness to continue forward, even when circumstances provide easy outs. People respect strength, not excuses. That truth reframes how obstacles are handled. Actions leave lasting impressions. Explanations rarely do. Over time, the reputation built is not of the hurdles faced, but of the resilience displayed while crossing them. Life doesn't pause while you figure yourself out. Some people step away from commitments, telling themselves they'll rejoin the race once they've figured things out. Others delay decisions, waiting for certainty to arrive before acting. Yet outside of those pauses, the current of life keeps moving. Bills don't freeze, relationships evolve, and opportunities quietly shift to those who are present. The truth is stark. The world does not wait for personal clarity. The appeal of hesitation is obvious. Certainty feels safe. Readiness feels responsible. But time refuses to bend to personal timelines. Days accumulate into months, and while one person holds still, others advance. Waiting for the perfect moment often ensures that the moment is lost altogether. Examples surround us. Graduates unsure of their career direction hesitate, only to watch peers secure positions while their own options narrow. Someone postpones pursuing love until everything is in order, only to see the chance pass. Even personal ambitions, learning a skill, starting a business, taking a risk, fade as hesitation hardens into habit. Life's pace is impartial. It doesn't halt for heartbreak or pause for indecision. Even while someone is recovering, planning, or searching, the current keeps pulling forward. Clarity often comes not before the step, but after it. This truth isn't a call to reckless action. It is a reminder that engagement matters more than perfection. Decisions made in motion create growth, even if they lead to mistakes. Indecision, by contrast, only guarantees stagnation. Life doesn't pause while anyone figures themselves out. The lesson isn't cruelty, it's urgency. Each day spent waiting is still a day lived, whether used or lost. And the only way to truly know who you are is not through hesitation, but through the act of living, choosing, and continuing to move. The clock never stops ticking. An alarm rings, a hand reaches for the snooze button, and the cycle begins. 10 minutes feel harmless, but while those minutes pass, the world continues. Messages arrive, daylight shifts, and the day moves forward regardless. That's the unshakable truth. The clock never stops ticking. Time has no sympathy. It doesn't pause for exhaustion, hesitation, or doubt. Seconds slip into minutes, minutes into hours, and the flow continues whether action is taken or not. Progress or stagnation, it all happens against the same steady rhythm. This reality plays out everywhere. Careers don't stall because of lack of ambition alone, but because too many hours were left unused. Relationships don't fade overnight, but through repeated delays of later. Dreams collapse quietly, not from impossibility, but from the assumption that more time will always appear. And yet, the relentlessness of time is what makes it valuable. Each tick adds weight to choices. It forces priorities into focus. It demands that distractions be cut away so the essential things can be done while they still can. Without that pressure, there would be little urgency to act at all. The clock never stops ticking. Accepting that doesn't mean living in panic. It means living awake. Every choice spends time, and no amount of regret can buy it back. Yesterday's minutes are gone. Tomorrow's are uncertain. What remains is now, and what's done with it defines everything else. Time is the fairest and the harshest resource. Everyone receives it, everyone spends it, and no one controls its pace. The only question that matters is simple. Are the seconds passing wasted, or are they being used to build a life worth the time already spent? Everything you build will eventually decay. Fresh paint on the walls, polished wood underfoot, everything shining as if it might last forever. In the beginning, every creation feels permanent, but give it time, the paint peels, the wood groans, and what once looked unshakable begins to fade. That is life's quiet reminder. Everything you build will eventually decay. Decay isn't failure, it's inevitability. Time wears down the strongest foundations. Cities that once defined empires lie in ruins. Corporations that seemed invincible collapse into footnotes. Even personal triumphs once celebrated drift into memory. Nothing we make escapes the slow erosion of change. It's tempting to see this as discouraging. Why bother building at all if nothing endures? Yet permanence was never the real purpose. The value lies in what something gives while it's alive. A house may not last forever, but it offers years of safety and warmth. A business may eventually close, but while it runs, it creates jobs and ideas. Relationships may change, but the moments within them carry meaning that time can't erase. Understanding decay shifts how we live. Instead of fighting to preserve everything, we learn to embrace impermanence. The goal becomes impact, not immortality. The worth of what you build isn't measured by how long it lasts, but by how deeply it matters while it does. Everything you build will eventually decay. That truth may sound heavy, but it's also liberating. It frees you from the impossible chase of permanence and directs your energy toward creation that matters now. Nothing lasts forever, but the act of building, of giving shape to meaning while you can, is what makes life worth the effort. Life ends the same for everyone, no matter how it's lived. A walk through any cemetery tells the story. Marble statues stand beside weathered stones. Some names are remembered in history books, others have already faded beyond recognition. Different lives, different legacies, but beneath the earth, every path arrives at the same destination. Death is the one certainty that ignores status, wealth, or ambition. No empire, no achievement, no possession has ever stopped it. Kings and labourers, artists and soldiers, leaders and wanderers, all meet the same silence. What separates them isn't the ending, but the way they filled the space before it. This is what makes mortality both humbling and clarifying. It strips away the illusions we cling to, the idea that success, recognition, or fortune might grant immunity. The chapter always closes. What remains is the imprint, the kindness shown, the courage displayed, the lives touched along the way. History proves it again and again. Pharaohs who built monuments the size of mountains still lie in the same dust as those who farmed their fields. Writers who shaped culture, inventors who changed the world, and ordinary parents raising children. All carried different roles, yet none escaped the final equalizer. Life ends the same for everyone. That fact can feel harsh, but it also frees us. If the destination is certain, then the journey becomes everything. Not how long you hold the stage, but how you choose to live while the curtain is open. In the end, death is universal. What isn't universal is how you spend the days that lead there. And that, more than the inevitability of the ending, is what defines the worth of a life.